Well, and any visitors this afternoon? It's going to get really warm in here, isn't it? Okay, so we'll start the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence, please? Councillor Swan. Councillor Gilkey. And from the Labour Group, Anne Francis Hayes, Betsy Wood, and Bill Connor. Thank you. Councillor Rose, please. Councillor Stevens. Atkins. Chairman. Another need to get started. Okay, thank you. Don't knock anything over on your way out. Councillor Fordham. Councillor Nislow. Yeah. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest to declare in the business before the council today?
There is a difference in interest in inspection myself. I can say.
Thank you. The next business is the chairman's announcements. A reminder, the trial last meeting, this meeting is being live streamed and available for subsequent playback through the council's website and YouTube channel. You should be aware that the council's data controller under the Data Protection Act data collected during the webcast. Yep, someone's now dealing with it.
Chairman. Chair, thank you. The loop system is sounding like somebody's got a vacuum cleaner running somewhere. There's something interfering with it, and I can't hear anything else other than that, whatever it is.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. You say you can't hear me. Can you hear me now, Barry? What about now? You okay? You're not working. How about now? You think it's all okay? It's not okay, but... Okay, so time-wise, we'll adjourn the meeting until we've sorted this out. However, please don't wander off far because we've got a lot to get through today and I don't want to chasing people around the building. Try and sit back down again. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
So we're on declarations of interest, Chair. Alison, I just...
Yes. So to confirm that a declaration of interest, Alison said she would be leaving the meeting whilst we discuss that paper. The third on the thing on the agenda is the chairman's announcements. I did start this. I'll start it again. This meeting is being live streamed and available for subsequent playback through the council's website and YouTube channel. You should be aware that the council is a data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during the webcast will be retained in accordance with the council's published policy. If any member of the public has concerns about this, please speak to a member of staff now. Please ensure that mobile phones and any other IT equipment is on silent. Microphones, please press the button once to request to speak and once at the end of your speech. There is no need to press it again. It will be sorted out for you. If you have any issues with the microphones or voting, please ask for assistance from the Democratic Service staff that are present with you today. I start with some sad news. That earlier this month we learned the sudden death of Tim Freeman, who was Deputy Manager Director of Toyota UK and a highly respected board member of the D2N2 LEP. Many members here work closely with, and we send our condolences with him, and we send our condolences to his family, friends and colleagues. I would also like to sincerely thank Pat Blore, who has been attending the council meetings as our stenographer for over 40 years. We have invited Pat to attend this afternoon as our guest, but it wasn't her wish to do so, preferring to remain in the background. We are grateful to Pat for her contribution to Derbyshire for such a long time, and even though technology has moved on, this doesn't diminish her professionalism and skill. Thank you, Pat, for your service. 2024, yeah, okay. Can I ask David Muller, please? Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chairman. Like many of my fellow councillors down in South Derbyshire, I've known Tim Freeman for quite a few years. Mainly, we knew him very well at the many liaison meetings we had down at the Toyota factory. And, of course, there were other events in around my ward, in the ward area, that he came to support. His premature death was obviously a terrible shock to all of us, and especially to his colleagues down there in Toyota. I've already personally sent my own condolences to his wife Sharon and his family, and I'm sure we all here would also like to send our sympathy down to his wife and family. So Tim, he will be greatly missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next announcement. 2024 marks 50 years of the Derbyshire County Council existence. And we have in the room today two members that have been part of this council for that time, from its incision right until today. We want to recognise these councillors, Councillor Robert Parkinson and Councillor Dave Allen. So if you'll indulge me, I would like to hand over to Councillor Kemp, our Civic Chairman, to mark this tremendous achievement. Councillor Parkinson and Allen, would you like to move to the front, please?
I feel extremely proud and somewhat humbled to be presenting Councillor Robert Parkinson and Councillor Dave Allen with outstanding dedication to Derbyshire honours today. Both men have served their communities and this council for over half a century apiece, and that is a huge achievement. It is only right that we recognise and celebrate their unstinting service, dedication and commitment over all these years. The idea for creating the outstanding dedication for Derbyshire honours was first mooted by our council leader, Councillor Barry Lewis, who was keen to mark the milestone of 50 years of a modern Derbyshire County Council, which evolved following the 1974 reform of local government. What better way to do that than to highlight the efforts of these two hard-working councillors and all they have done, not only for residents in their divisions, but across the county. The list of committees, interests and causes they have both been involved in and championed is as impressive as it is endless. And you'll be glad to hear that I'm not going to read those all out. And while they both sit on opposite sides of the chamber, I know they share one thing in common, and that is to do the right thing by the people that they serve. Representing everyone in a community is the job of a councillor, whether they voted for you at the ballot box or not. Sometimes they are you are their first port of call, and sometimes their last, where they've explored every other avenue and looked to you for support. I'm in no doubt that over the years, both councillors have gone the extra mile many, many times for the people they represent. And I would like to think that they have got some satisfaction from doing that. They should certainly be very proud. We are not always rewarded in this role. I sometimes wonder if ever, but that's not why we do it. We do it because we love our communities and will do anything we can to support and protect them and help them to thrive. And hand on heart, I can safely say that is what Councillors Parkinson and Allen, Robert and Dave have done and continue to do. Many thanks to you both. It is the right way, and the right way up as well, though. Yeah, you come first. You see,
Oh, right, thanks.
get first dibs.
Yeah, thanks.
Here, Dave.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
And Robert, likewise yourself. One for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
It's got the photographer working.
And this young lady who actually did a very good job of writing my speech for me as well.
Right, Robert and Tony, should we do a picture at the front here? It's easy.
Sure.
Yes, you can. Yes, okay.
Is it, I think we've got it working now properly. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Civic Chairman, I first of all sort of thank the council and all those who've dreamt up this idea of this award, which I sort of feel feel very, very honoured and indeed very humbled to have been awarded today, and very gratefully accept. Next year will actually mark some 60 years that I've actually been a councillor at all levels of local government, but starting in parish, district, borough and county. Of those, I've served 55 years in total as a member of this council or the county and its immediate predecessor. In those days when I was first elected, the county election for some odd reason was always held in April, not May. And so next April will mark my 60th, to my first, not the 60th, 50 something, my first election to the county council. I say it's been a great honour to serve the people of my various electoral divisions. I've had 2 of them, which have changed a little bit over the years, as these things do. But I also had the great honour of being asked, of course, to be effectively the first civic chairman of the county council, which is a great honour, enabled me to get me and my wife June and daughter Claire, who acts as my consorts at times, to get around the county and meet so many amazing people who do so much in working for their fellow citizens. So I would again sort of thank everyone who is behind this particular award. Can I say just this, though, that of those 55 years, I think I've spent 22 as a member of the controlling group and 33 in opposition. But I've always found this, that I've never been one for actually going to the press and complaining all the time. I think if you really want to get something done, you have to have good relations with everybody, whether it be officers, members, on either political side. And I've always had good relationships. I've always found that working with relevant committee chairmen or cabinet members of whichever party they are is the way to actually get things done. If you spend all the time going to the press, that just puts backs up. So my advice to all members in the future is work on good relations and get things done behind the scenes. You get far more done that way. So again, thank you all very much for this honour today. I'm very grateful to receive it, and I'll hand over to David now.
Thank you, Robert. Chair, I do assure you that this book is not the whole of. It's my book of thoughts. I keep writing bits down. As you can imagine, I've thought quite a lot about it today. I'm really proud and thankful for the council to honour both of us for the long service. It seems next year for me it would be 52 years. It seems a hell of a long time, and it's a time to reflect. And there's a lot of things have changed, gone on, and I won't be standing again. And I'll be very sad about that. And but again, I think you've got to get out when perhaps you're on top. I've seen so many people over the years have left it perhaps too late, and I think you've got to get out where you can. I've seen a lot of members and officers over the years, and I've worked with many leaders. The first leader was Peter Regan back in the days, and then there was Dave Bookbinder, there was Martin Doughty, John Williams and Anne Weston, and currently Joan, who's the leader. I've got to mention, I think when I spoke last year when Dave Bookbinder died, that I said he was a great leader. So I say to me, he was the greatest leader, but apart from Joan, of course. So I said I'd say that. When I first started, I remember in the members' room there, we stood there in a room full of people, and I felt I could have just disappeared into a hole in the ground and nobody would ever noticed. And it was really pale. And at that time, I think Bucky took me under his wing because he thought I had something to do with Chesterfield Transport, which I hadn't. So I ended up being his vice chair on transport, and we spent many a happy year travelling to Manchester and areas because he was linking with the Greater Transport Executive in Manchester. And I think I worked with Bucky right through till he packed up in 92, I think it was, when I actually stood as leader against Martin Doughty. I've got to be honest, I'm pleased I lost because I just don't think I could have coped. And Martin, as some of us will remember, was a great leader as well. But again, I think You know, the times we were booking were very exciting. If anybody does remember, some of his speeches, they should have been recorded because they were gems. He stood there and spoke eloquently. I always said that any of us could have said the same speech and we'd all fall asleep, but the passion and thing that he gave them, he was really, really good. They were good times. And in those days, we used to set the rates as it was in the morning of the council meeting in the afternoon. You can't imagine that now. One of my side achievement, I managed to get the group to transfer £1 million from highways into social services at the time. I always think that was, I mean, £1 million these days is nothing, but at the time I felt it was a great achievement. Those things, we couldn't do those these days. Again, in those days, I was proud to say that we provided a free home help service. We had a lot of residential homes, and service for people who learned difficulties were some of the best. And I always told new people moved into Derbyshire because of the level of those services. So I really enjoyed that. At that time, Annette Nosquith was the opposition leader, and in terms of social care. And I had to make sure that I always read the papers because she'd read them, and I had to be aware, really keen that she really took that interest to heart. I was also pleased that we developed extra care schemes, which again I think are the way forward. And sadly times have changed and we're no longer able to provide those, which is very sad to me, but that's a separate sort of thing. I will mention we used to meet the private homeowners on an annual basis to agree the fees, and that was an exciting time. And Bruce, who's at the back there, will probably remember some of those times. One of them, he said, "You've been so tight with it, I've had to sell my second Bentley," which really, really upset me. And he said, "You're nothing but a communist," which it was quite an honour to me, I felt. I've just mentioned Bruce. Me and Bruce worked for many a year together, and they were good times. I mean, I think Bruce would have liked to be both chair and chief officer at times, but it was good. We had a good time. And in fact, since both of us he's retired now, sort of, we actually go hiking about once a month if we can. But they were good times. One of the things was that with Buck, he insisted that members did interviews, and that again was stressful at times. His view was that you never see civil servants doing the interviews, so we had to do that. And that again, one of the things we tried to do as cabinet members or chairs, we saw how many radio stations you get in on a day, and that was really good. I think I got 5 in one day, and in fact, I actually did an interview on Radio Derby. I was sat in the bath, so that was quite amusing. Yeah, sure, it was an audio interview. It was stressful, and I always remember that at one time I was on Sky News, and that was live on Sky News, which was quite an achievement in a sense. Just a few members that some people might remember of. There were people like Harry Lowe, some people might remember, Jock Mackay, Joe Murphy, Bob Walker, and Dave Wilcox. And then we got Smithy back there. I'm pleased he's come today to say hello. It's great to see you, mate. Yeah. And also Annette was a great person. And Keith Orman again, and quite a lot of other members. I think at the times, we're obviously political opponents, but I think generally we have a good banter. In the end, we reasonably speak to each other. So, it is the way it is. Now, we spent hours and hours in this room discussing open casting at the time. It was one of the biggest, it seemed to be the biggest issue. And also, if people who remember Morton tip, the toxic tip, which they ended up buying. And again, many hours are spent talking about that. And reflect back, American Adventure was a great thing that happened, and I think it was good. Now, and my wife back there, I'm a hoarder. I can't help it. There's an ongoing debate about getting rid of paperwork and things, but as a hoarder, I've got loads and loads of stuff. I mean, you've got the first council meeting papers from 73 somewhere. But one of the things that I'm really proud of is that at the time there was an election with Tony Benn. At the same time, and I've actually got a poster that says "Vote Ben and Alan." I mean, that to me is a gem, really, when you think about it. And then, hang on, I'm losing my train of thought here. Oh yes, one of my first election addresses, because at the time the Conservatives were in power, and my pictures over the years have changed from being, well, can you imagine? Yeah, being youthfullish to pretty old. But one of the quotes on it, there's a little rhyme that says, "A vote per day will help to save the county from the Tories." I always remember that. It just rhymes, doesn't it? Beautiful stuff, really. So I'd just like to mention the support we've had. I mean, Julie's here at the back. Julie and Bev and Teresa, Sue and Michelle, and the other Michelle now currently helping us. We have great support. And one of the things, again, it's a little bit anecdotal for me, but Bev used to do my little tapes. I mean, Julia probably remember these little tapes. You have to dictate these tapes endlessly. And it was a really exciting, good time. And I think we did quite a lot. I'd like to mention Carmel, the press office, Mandy and Liz Tomes, who set me up on some amazing things. There's one picture of me stood on a viaduct on somewhere in the Peak doing abseiling as a thing with these young people. Not every picture tells us I didn't go down. I just stood there like absolutely terrified. So anyway, as I say, everything tells a story. And then other things, like I was sat there with bowls of water with my feet in on some of the campaign. So I mean, the press people have done a great job over the years and setting me up wonderfully. So I must admit, that was great fun. Just a couple of more bits. I was invited to speak at an LGA conference, and when the Disabled Disability Act came out, and then down in London, I was in this massive hall, and I didn't know a thing I was going to talk about. I'd tried to gen it up as you do, but my God, I was winging it as it goes. And then another one that always makes me smile, there was a promoting breastfeeding conference down at Whitworth, and I spoke on that, and I thought, how do you address this one? So anyway, I managed to find something about Queen Victoria and her view on breastfeeding, so we got through that. So it's been a great time. And I've got to finish by mentioning my family. Caroline, my first wife, she's put up with a lot. My kids, there's two of them here. They've had to, kids, your family do suffer because you do spend a lot of time. I heard my dad said to me once, he says, you'll regret this, you're out such a lot. And I have reflected quite a bit, but my kids are great. And then Jenny, my wife, she puts up with a lot, or has done over the years. Again, it's stressful, it's fun, but I've really enjoyed it. And if I've forgotten anybody, I should have said, I do apologise. But thanks, everybody. Thanks for putting up with me for my little ramblings then. But I was determined I'd got to say something, and hopefully some of those anecdotal bits may have made you smile a little bit. Thank you.
Could I please invite Councillor Lewis and Councillor Dixon to the floor, please? Photographs and anything you want to say, you can say then. I have no control over Dave.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and it is wonderful to see the recipients of these awards today. And thank you, Councillor Kemp, for your words earlier. I echo all that you've said. I would like to add my great thanks to both councillors for their outstanding service to the people of Derbyshire over such a long period of time. As we dedicate these honours to them both, it's time to reflect on the fact that they have given more than 100 years of service between them, which is quite astonishing. That in itself is outstanding. And their experience in helping and supporting communities over those years is something that we must all aspire to. When I realised that 2024 was that milestone for this council, albeit in the grand scheme of things relatively small, and I thought long and hard about the best ways that we could mark it, and it's been known to me for quite some time that both Robert and Dave have approached or over 50 years worth of service. So that 50 years ago, that 1974 reform of local government seemed to be a good starting point for that journey that we started to become a modern Derbyshire County Council, the thing that we are today, basically. Over those 50 years, we've continued to evolve and be forward-thinking, to be an enterprising organisation that we're all proud to represent today. Local government is very different today than it was 50 years ago. Those anecdotes that both Dave and Robert told us today were brilliant and just reflect, a very different time for local government. And it should go without saying that as well as a dedicated and skilled workforce, thriving councils need strong and decisive leaders with outstanding men and women who are able to stand, willing to stand for their residents and their communities and to support all of those common goals. And in Robert and Dave, we have two shining examples of two people who embody this so perfectly. They've been at the forefront of their communities for all of this time, supporting them when they needed them, fighting for those causes that they believed in, and standing up for residents' rights when they were called upon to do so. We all know that as a councillor, you're never off duty. If the phone rings or a text or an email comes in at whatever time, you're there to help. You're there to advise and do whatever it is that you can in your power to help. You're there to celebrate when things go right and try to put things right when they go wrong.
It's what we are here to do. It's what we do all the time. I have no doubt that between the two of you, that there are some very interesting stories, as we've heard, enough to fill books, at least 2 books, I would say. And I'm glad we got to hear some of them, and I'm glad, and we'll probably get to hear a few more after council today when we have a cup of tea and break a bit of cake. Both of you have seen many changes over the years and seen this council through many ups and downs, bringing wisdom, experience and a guiding hand to everything you've been involved in. To do that for more than 100 years, I keep saying that because it's quite a number between you, is a very worthy celebration. And I'm delighted to see you both here today to receive your outstanding dedication to Derbyshire honours. And I'm sure we're all agreed that they are both very worthy recipients indeed. Thank you.
Well, this was a bit of a surprise. I didn't realise I was going to speak, so I don't actually have a speech written. So
You borrow mine.
no, yeah, great. One of the things, we're going to have a council meeting today. That's why we're really here, and we know there's going to be rough and tumble in this council chamber, and there is a certain amount of Punch and Judy that happens in here. But I was just talking to Simon, and he's my sort of nemesis within the county. And actually, one of the things I think Simon and I have is great respect for each other. We might not disagree on everything, but and I think that's something that we have to remember, because when we come into local government, we all come in to serve our communities. And though we do have differences, we're all motivated for the right reason. And I think it's amazing that these 2 gentlemen here have given, yes, Barry, 100 years, I've stolen your speech, 100 years of service to their communities. And as I say, this can be quite a harsh place to be, but I remember very fondly, Robert, I went on a county council network conference, and I had a delightful evening with you, and you were talking to me about your horses and your love of equestrianism. And sometimes I think we see each other as villains and don't see each other as for the people we really are. So thank you for your service. And I know you worked at Rolls-Royce before that, because my husband worked with you. You might not remember him, but he worked with you and sends his best wishes today as well. And as for Dave, he has represented Hasland and Whitby for a very, very long time, and that's a standing. He spends more time in Whitby than he does in Derbyshire, I think, and I hope you will get to spend more time in Whitby. And as somebody who very rarely has a holiday, he's permanently taunting me about what holiday he's going on next. But he has been. He's the father of our group. He's the chair of our group. I've known you now for nearly 20 years. And, sometimes when, as a councillor, you don't know where you're going or you're doing the right thing, Dave's always the person I can ring up and talk to. And he always gives a very balanced view. So I'd just like to say thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. And many holidays for both of you in the future. So thank you.
Thank you for all that. Can you now come to the front and be pictured, please? Come on, Joan. So we can get back on track, please. I've got a holiday in January. It seems to be coming up very, very quickly. Okay, item 4, the minutes. I move the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of October, pages 1 to 28, are approved as a correct record. I seek comments on accuracy only. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Lewis.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any comments or comments? No. Then can I move to the vote then, please? Okay, anybody else wishes to vote before I close the vote? Okay, that's unanimous then, thank you. Those minutes are approved. The next item is item 5, report of the leader of the council and members' questions on that report. Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Just a few things to report today. First one is around the sort of Q2 results. That's the Q2 position that everybody's waiting for with bated breath. The performance and budget monitoring report's now been published with the details of that are that the council is forecasting a net overspend of 28.104 million. It was around 20 million at Q1, as people will be aware. So still a very significant issue facing us as a local authority. You will be pleased to hear that we published these well ahead, and they were published this Monday as part of the audit papers that were released back then. I can tell you that savings delivery is on track in most areas, but continuing demand and cost pressures in adults and children's social care services are resulting in that forecast over expenditure being slightly in excess of budget. Given the level of forecast overspend across the council, actions, as you would expect, have been taken to reduce that spend through spending controls. And in addition to that, to accelerate our savings and demand reduction activity, the council is also planning to secure some additional external capacity as well. I know my colleague, Councillor Spencer, will be talking about this a little bit more detail later on in some of the questions that he's answering. So I shall leave that particular topic there for now. But I can say that the situation is compounded by the employer's national insurance situation. Whilst local authorities have been insulated from that rise, our providers are not, and that is a very significant issue, and just working through the numbers around that at the moment. So that means that potentially any government additionality that may have been due to come to us from budget announcements and so on may well be eaten up by this very particular issue. The budget was, as we saw, overall pretty disastrous, not just for local authorities, but for businesses and farmers. And again, we'll be discussing that a little bit more detail a little bit later on as well. And we're having a debate, as you saw, on the so-called family farm tax. Businesses have been particularly affected in a similar way due to those changes as well. And again, I'll talk about that when we get to that particular issue a little bit later on. The other one I wanted to talk to you about was free schools. Very disappointed to see that the free school programme has been cut and derailed. Affects 4 schools in the county, the Avenue, Bolsover New Sixth Form, the Newhouse Farm and Infinity Park Secondary School. All of these were backed up by sound business cases. But ideologically, it seems that the Labour Party are opposed to these and want to lose that agenda. And this is an assault on key infrastructure, which could cost local taxpayers millions of pounds as well. So very disappointing news around that. The recent SEND review with our partners in health and education have highlighted some real concerns, which we acknowledge and are working to address in common with many other local authorities who have had similar judgments. It's no excuse, and my colleague, Councillor Dale, has addressed this in various interviews over the course of the last week, and we'll address these questions that have been posed today in some detail later on as well. So that's all I've got to say, I think, at the moment, other than to add that myself and Councillor Spencer have taken part in the farmers' protest, the mass protest in London on the 19th of November, which saw 40,000 farmers on the streets. There are many farmers that we represent across our rural divisions across Derbyshire, and we were very pleased to support our farmers in that action. As I say, I'll stop there to keep my further thoughts for the motion later on. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Fordham, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful to the leader for bringing up at this meeting, as he hasn't always done the case, of the budget monitoring and the overspend. I just want to clarify something I think he said, because I really am slightly puzzled by it. He said that there's a 28.104 million overspend that was previously 20 million, and that situation is compounded by the proposed changes in national insurance. Not actually true, is it? It's 28.104 million, and the situation may get worse in the future. But the issue of the overspend is now here and you. It's not what the government have announced will happen in the future and hasn't yet taken effect. I grant you the government's decision may make matters worse, in particular with service providers, where we are buying a service in. You could almost argue the case for not auctioning out such services, but that was the decision of your government. But it's not true to say that the overspend is down to the Labour government's decisions that have been overspend, I think, sits at your door and your government's budgets. It is inaccurate of you to stand up in this chamber and say it is compounded by. That is a prophecy for the future, not true now.
There wasn't one. Councillor Dixon, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank the leader for his report. You will have seen on the questions, for councillors' questions later on the agenda, that I have actually raised the issue about whether we were going to be able to talk about the Q2 results at this meeting, because then our next meeting will actually be in February, and that will be our budget setting meeting. But in many ways, Councillor Lewis, it sort of highlights the ridiculous situation that we in opposition have to face, because we have to guess what might or might not be coming on the agenda. And when it comes to finances, we have been repeatedly denied access to officers. We requested a briefing on Q2, and I have been told that we could not have it before Friday this week. But in the same period, an email has gone out to staff about the Q2 reports and listing the measures that are being taken to alleviate our financial troubles. Now, I did spot that the Q2 was on the audit agenda for next week, and I wasn't expecting there to be a surprise in it, and it's not surprising that there is that further £8 million overspend. What was even a greater surprise to me was that you are going to have a cross-party budget committee. It's rather strange, because you're obviously so desperate to sort this out that you've got to invite me onto it, who 2 meetings ago you called me financially illiterate. It doesn't say much for the rest of you.
Councillor Dixon.
But do you think it's right that we, Councillor Ford and myself and any of the other opposition party members, you didn't have the courtesy to pick up the phone and saying, this is what I'm proposing, before putting it out in a message that went out to staff before the actual elected members?
Councillor Gillett, please. Do you want to answer that question? I think.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, if I may. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Just to address some of the comments made by Councillor Fordham is quite right. There is a separation between that 28 point whatever million and the forthcoming issues that will arise as a consequence of the NI. I'm not denying that. It will be an issue that will compound it, it seems. Just to ensure that I was quite keen that this item did appear. I wish it could appear on this agenda in some way, and that we could release the papers in a formal way. But there are processes that the council has to adhere to. However, it was fortuitous that it went out with the audit papers on Monday. Not the same report, but pretty close. And therefore, I hope you've had opportunity to see those particular papers. On your point around the budget committee that you talked about, yes, I'd be quite happy to have yourself on there, despite your financial illiteracy. So don't worry about that, Councillor Dixon. That's absolutely fine. And to have Councillor Fordham on there as well, if he wishes to be. But there is a fundamental point about trying to get under the skin of all of the issues that affect this council in terms of our overspend. They are complex. They need to be sort of dug into. The questions need to be asked of officers in a considered and careful way, of course. How are we in this position? So that we all in this chamber have a clear, full understanding of what the financial drivers are that have led us to this particular situation. They are many and varied. They are deeply complicated. And the only way to get under the skin of those, as I say, is to sit in the chamber, to sit in a meeting and ask officers direct questions. Because it will be an illuminating exercise, and I think we should all be part of that wider discussion.
Councillor Dixon, have you got a supplementary question?
I'll ask the same question. Does he think it's right that a report should go out to staff saying that there's going to be this cross-party commission without actually having the courtesy to speak to the other elected members who might potentially be involved?
I definitely heard a question, Councillor Lewis.
I did. There was definitely a question there, and I didn't address it. So, Councillor Dixon is quite right. My apologies. Yes, I did.
Councillor Dale, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased that the leader referenced the sword of Damocles that's now hanging over 4 of our free school proposals within the county by the Labour government, as well as 40 others around the country. Does he agree with me that it's an absolute slap in the face to all of those communities where you have new housing, people moving into those properties, rightly expecting that there will be a primary school, for the government to then put those under threat with this review? Does he agree it's a slap in the face to all of those who've been working tirelessly to try and make these proposals happen, whether that's us as local councillors, whether it's the officers that build up those business cases, whether it's our former MPs, Heather Wheeler, Lee Rowley and Mark Fletcher, who worked tirelessly to try and get these proposals over the line, or whether it's the schools themselves and the trusts, the Academy Trusts, who've been working really hard to make the case to government for this. As well, with a Labour government that's just had the largest tax-raising budget since the Second World War at £40 billion and borrowing of £70 billion, to then propose the potential cancelling of essential infrastructure projects is an absolutely absurd and ludicrous thing to do. And finally, will he join me in calling on the Labour group to do what they can to lobby their government with us to try and ensure that these projects stay happening and proceed to get built as they were originally going to prior to this ridiculous review? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gillett, please. Oh, no, sorry. Do you want to answer that, Councillor Lewis?
I would like to, if I may, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. No, I entirely agree. It is an absolute slap in the face, I think, for the communities, for all of the organisations involved. The local authorities have put in such a huge amount of work to try and get these free schools up and running. Councillor Cupid and myself, we have split responsibilities for the Avenue, for example, and that is it's been a key site, as we know, Europe's most polluted site as well. Key site for regeneration there. And that school was fundamentally important because of the rising population of young people that we have across all of our communities. And now that hope of that project ever happening is gone, at least for the time being, which is massively disappointed. Sixth form provision in Councillor Dixon's own division has been something that's been long sought, and again, it's gone. It's disappeared, wiped off the face of the earth as a project after so much hard work was done by the previous MP. So I do hope, Councillor Dale, that the opposition do join with us in a campaign and lobby the current Labour government to put these free schools back on track. And as for the other infrastructure projects you've alluded to, the Barrow Hill line has gone, the Robin Hood line is gone as well. There's so many infrastructure projects, and we are losing out here in the East Midlands, despite having an East Midlands Mayoral County Combined Authority. It is disappointing, Chairman.
Councillor Dale, have you got a supplementary question? Thank you. Councillor Gillett, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'm pleased you mentioned the Avenue School, because that's the school that I want to talk about and ask a question about, because while it's not in my area, my community of Claycross South is actually affected by that school, because part of the proposed catchment area would include Claycross, and there's a proposal to bus children from Claycross and also the neighbouring village up to that school. Now, my understanding is it's not being formally cancelled at this stage, but a review's taking place. The review is to determine whether or not there is still a need for that school due to the falling birth rate and therefore the impact on pupil numbers. And I would certainly welcome that, because I certainly wouldn't want money spending on a school for which there may or may not be a need. And we clearly don't know that from what I've been told anyway so far. But I also would welcome the fact that there are alternative solutions being considered as well by this authority, which would allow young people to stay in their own community and go to schools in their own village. So are you actually saying, Councillor Lewis, that we should go ahead and build these schools, and certainly this one, whether or not there is a need for it, just because the previous MP promised it, but the government at the time never found the funding for it, despite it being there for several years?
Okay. There is a question there.
Yes, there is. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. And I'm pretty sure the government will find some reason to use the evidence, whatever the evidence might be, to wipe off the ability to have a free school in the Avenue for purely ideological reasons. I think we spent years working up business cases, and as I alluded to in my earlier report, there is a solid business case for that school, as there has been for having a Bolsover sixth form as well. So, but I'm sure, as I say, that the Labour government will find some sound reasons not to have free schools in their area.
Councillor, have you got a supplementary question? Thank you. No, apparently. Our next item is the public questions. I've been informed that the first question, Andy Billings, unfortunately Andy is not here today. The question has been in the papers and was produced at the same time as the agenda, so I have no intention of reading it out. Councillor Dale, would you like to answer the question, please?
To answer the question, Chair, he may be watching on the stream, and if not, I will send him a copy of the response as well. But thank you for your question, Mr. Billings. While I appreciate you may not wish to accept it, I want to start by offering a profound apology on behalf of the department for the poor standard of service you've received, particularly in relation to communication, which we acknowledge has not been good enough at all and must improve. There are a number of steps being taken to improve our communication engagement with parents and schools, and this is a huge focus for us at the moment. This includes the recent launch of the online EHC Hub, and while it will clearly take a bit of time to bed in, the benefits of providing much greater transparency for parents and schools around the EHC process is that it should significantly reduce the need to contact officers for updates and thereby help to free the officers up to respond and answer to those more technical inquiries they receive in a much more timely way. In answer to your specific question, the answer is of course no, but I respectfully do not agree that that has been the case. It is not uncommon for emails to members of the Cabinet, local members and senior officers to be passed to the relevant operational officer to respond, particularly when the inquiry is technical in nature or relates to case-specific information. This is particularly the case when many of the emails we receive we are copied in on rather than being the direct recipient, as is the case with the significant majority of your emails. The default expectation is that the direct recipient is best placed to respond on behalf of the authority. That said, having reviewed the correspondence file, I can see several examples where myself, Councillor Lewis and Councillor Patton have sent emails to the department to chase up the responses to you, recognising that the delays you were experiencing weren't acceptable. It's also typical for emails to the Leader of the Council or the relevant local member to be passed to the relevant Cabinet member for response, as was the case with your email last year. I've already apologised for the significant and unacceptable amount of time it took to provide a response, and as I explained at the time, as elected members do not hold access to case files, and nor would it be appropriate for us to do so, we are reliant on receiving relevant information by the service in order that we can respond. I've checked back over my own correspondence file again and have seen there were several examples where my office and I were chasing the department for this information. It's no excuse for how long it took, but the only explanation I can provide is that the SEND team has and continues to be extremely stretched in seeking to deal with a significant rise in the number of requests for assessment. Similarly, I also receive a very significant volume of correspondence on SEND from parents, carers, grandparents, head teachers, SENCOs, governors, elected members and MPs. I always seek to do what I can to help in each case and respond as quickly as possible, but openly admit to not always being able to do so due to the sheer volume of the requests. Once again, I'm profoundly sorry on behalf of the authority that your experience has been so poor and unacceptable. I am very happy to meet with Mr Billings to go through this in more detail and look over the case and understand all the areas that went wrong. You know, we are in a period of reflection and trying to learn from the experiences of parents, as we have been for a long time now, and I'm happy to do that process. But I would also add that as a Cabinet member, we have to be very careful about specifically intervening on behalf of individual cases to try and get a different outcome or change the decision of a multi-agency panel. It's absolutely appropriate that those professional officers make those decisions, and we don't try and intervene to escalate a specific case over any other case or try and change those decisions. So there is only so much that we can do in our position, but I'm very happy to meet and have that conversation with Mr Billings. Thank you, Chair.
And I can assure members that Mr Billing will have a chance to ask a supplementary question. Question 2 is from Julia. Unfortunately, Julia is not here today. I will not read the question because it's already been put in the public domain. And I'll ask Councillor Hart, please, to answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Yes, Julia Lemonchenko. She is a lady that we do actually know in the department dealing with the Ukrainian situation. She leads on one of the voluntary sector groups in Chesterfield who provides support for the Ukrainian refugees. They're very, very active, and they were given a grant under the Ukrainian scheme. So, as I say, she's asking for a meeting. Delighted to arrange that as soon as we possibly can. But just to inform Council on the Ukrainian situation, the leader had a nice letter from the Ukrainian ambassador for the UK and Northern Ireland. And I'll just read the first sort of paragraph. Dear Mr Lewis, I'm writing to express my heartfelt gratitude to Derbyshire County Council for its support of the people of Ukraine during these challenging times. The warm welcome that my compatriots received in Derbyshire is very much appreciated. And I think that's credit to our team who've worked very, very hard to make sure that host families and people are welcomed and they're looked after, and we've done our very best. And I think it's nice that this has been acknowledged. But the ambassador does go on to say that he feels that we may be able to work better together. He would look at working, whether it be businesses, getting to know each other, face to face, and everything else. He's talking about a visit to Derbyshire. So the leader has responded. We would like to look at working closer with them. We have pointed out, of course, that our budget is very tight, but certainly have a conversation, and that conversation will going on, and I'm sure we'll share that as and when we hear anything back. But I will certainly arrange a meeting with the lady as soon as I can. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Our next question is from David Ingham, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of full council, Councillor Spencer. I've specifically quoted staffing numbers remunerated over 50,000 at Improvement and Scrutiny Resources Committees on the 28th of September 23 and the 22nd of January this year, with figures lifted from the approved 22-23 financial accounts. After spotting 22-23 figures had been upwardly changed within the 23-24 accounts without any explanation, I've been informed that previous figures were incorrectly calculated due to 1.24 million of sacrificed salaries associated with shared cost AVCs not being included. I appreciate, given the recent approval of the additional duties and accelerated pay progression policy, that Council may not have wanted to put lights around this reason and this particular mistake, but as similar to absence statistics, I remain concerned when mistakes are not highlighted, especially within key important public documents. Given this untransparent change was made when, of all things, the cornerstone 23-24 financial accounts, how and when was the Cabinet member made aware of this particular 1.24 million error, if at all?
Councillor Spencer, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr Ingham, for the question. The issue highlighted in the question for the 22-23 accounts of the County Council was corrected in the 23-24 accounts. The discrepancy was discovered by the Council in the production of the 23-24 accounts, and it relates to a disclosure note in the accounts and does not impact on the main financial statement of the organisation. Thank you.
Have you a supplementary question?
Thank you for the response, Councillor Spencer. It's duly noted. I do find it fascinating and troubling that information sort of like shared between an office and elected members and what necessarily isn't declared. However, my supplementary question, I'm going to return back to the issue around the hold on just a second. So the supplementary question, I'll return back to the issue around my reference to the additional duties and accelerated pay progression, which are considered to be budget related. I am surprised by the amount of salary sacrificing to increase pension provision, in addition to contributions into conventional AVCs and freestanding AVCs. Officers appear to be retirement planning, whilst in parallel, payments for additional duties and accelerated pay to retain staff to plug retiree gaps could occur. Curiously, there's nothing to prevent additional duty payments being made to those that have sacrificed salaries. For accelerated pay, the policy states that this may not be applied if in the last year of service, but given there's no default retirement age, I'm unsure how the Council can know who that applies to. Given the Q2 overspend increasing to 28.104 million, can Councillor Spencer understand why I feel it's important that all application documentation, without exception, is recorded collectively and in a way which will enable elected members and the public to understand upon inquiry precisely the budgetary expenditure incurred in respect of these new payment provisions? Thank you.
Councillor Spencer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Of course, I can understand, Mr Ingham, the implications that you are tabling to the meeting today. And understanding the financial status of the Council is, of course, important to the Cabinet. But my role is a strategic role. And the question you have asked is a technical issue, which I'm more than happy to present to the Head of Finance, who will respond to you in writing in due course. Thank you very much.
Question 4 is from Mr Robert Barnes, please.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Robert Barnes, I'm from Ilkeston North. Question for Councillor Hoy. Given that Bentley Fields has reportedly been operating at only 50% capacity due to restricting its limit rather than a lack of demand, and that paying clients currently use the services, what basis and evidence, including the public consultation, did the council use to determine that the current model is financially unstable?
Unfortunately, Councillor Hoy isn't with us today, but Councillor Lewis will answer the question, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Barnes, and thank you for your question. So Bentley Fields has been identified by system partners and the council as being ideally situated geographically to support well-integrated assessment and reablement, and is essential to the model operating well, given its proximity to existing healthcare settings. The council considers that this site is most appropriately used to support community beds and community support beds and offer that under a single operating model, as well as being ideally placed geographically for this purpose. The environment within which the building affords the opportunity to provide support in dedicated rehabilitation and therapy rooms. The focus on delivering a well-integrated and effective short-term assessment and reablement service alongside system partners is an important strategic priority for the council. We know that in 22-23, across Derby and Derbyshire's combined footprint, 75% of people stayed in hospital for longer than was ideal. This illustrates the importance of investing in and focusing on flow through hospitals, supporting people outside of the acute setting, through an intensive period of reablement to regain as much independence as possible following a hospital admission. The same principle applies to the avoidance of hospital admissions where it is not required medically. During the consultation, the council received responses from Derby and Derbyshire's Integrated Care Board and Derbyshire's Community Health Services, DCHS. Both partners welcomed the council's intention to include a focus on reablement through the continued delivery of community support beds, as this helps deliver the joint strategic aim to support people in their homes for as long as possible. Both partners provided feedback that a single operating model across fewer sites with greater integration between health and social care to deliver effective assessment and reablement care would serve people better as a result of more people being able to access the service due to the efficiencies created by operating more beds from fewer sites. We know that reducing the number of sites from which the community support beds operate will achieve economies of scale, and this is an important factor when considering the best use of public resources, as well as the benefits cited for people using the service and for colleagues. During the consultation, DCHS highlighted that reducing the number of care homes from which community support beds are operated means that the healthcare colleagues are better able to utilise therapy and community nursing staff at a time when there is higher demand on those services than ever before, stretching scarce resources even further. By operating under a single model, partners will achieve efficiencies of scale and enable colleagues, ideally under one management structure, to support more people to regain as much independence as possible. Thank you, Chairman.
Have you got a supplementary question?
Right to reply. Two care homes was closed to get Bentley up and running. Skevington's Lane, Hazelwood, and one in West Allen, Beechcroft. I thought the council's intentions was to close them and have a bigger care home for Bentley. When did the council change its mind?
Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you very much indeed. You are correct. You are quite correct. And but the fact of the matter is that since the COVID pandemic in 2020, care models have changed quite significantly, and there's been a need for that care model to change. To highlight, as I highlighted the key points of my presentation to you just now, which is around reablement and making people, enabling people to stay at home for longer, and allowing that flow through from hospitals to back to our communities as well. And Bentley can play a sort of a key role
in that, and I think it will do that job quite well, and it enables us to retain that level of control within the community as well. But if I'll provide a much more further technical written answer to you in due course. It's not my area of specialism. Thank you.
Item 7, there's no petitions have been received. Item 8, the submission of the Derbyshire and Derby Joint Minerals Local Plan to the Secretary of State. Could I ask the Executive Director of Place to introduce the report, please?
Chair, thank you, members. This report recommends that the Council approves submission of the Derbyshire and Derby Joint Minerals Local Plan to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, and to accelerate our preparation for the resulting examination in public. This plan is a statutory requirement. Every local planning authority must prepare one where they're a minerals authority and submit a relevant and sound local plan for consideration by the planning inspectorate prior to adoption. This plan will set the land use policies in regard to minerals to guide development over the long term. This plan has therefore been in development for many years. And has been through kind of a detailed series of planning, development and consultation. The plan itself relies on over 60 supplementary documents to support the plan itself. The original draft of this plan was put in front of the Council and approved for consultation in March 2023. That went out to public consultation. The issues raised through that consultation are captured and listed in Appendix 4 of the report you see in front of you and have been responded to. Cabinet considered the revised report in September 24 and approved that should go through to the Secretary of State subject to the approval of Council today. Once submitted to the Secretary of State, we anticipate that examination in public will take place between April and June 2025, and with potential adoption of the plan by December 2025. Thank you.
Are there any questions of a technical nature for the Executive Director? No. Could I ask for a proposer then? Oh, sorry, Councillor Fordham, please.
Yeah, if I could just ask, if I heard correctly just now, the concerns and issues raised in the pre-submission draft plan, I think you said, have been captured and listed and responded to. Given the significance of some of the objections and some of the organisations lodging objections, it's not unreasonable to conclude, I think, that they've not therefore been addressed. We have captured them, listed them and responded to them. But we are, in our submission, actively choosing to disagree with many of those objectors, Historic England amongst them. My question, very specifically, given those issues have been raised not just by individuals or groups who might randomly have come together, given they are by structured government bodies or organisations that have government remit, what is the risk of this report being rejected? And what do we do then?
Mr. Henning.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor is quite right. We set out here both the issues raised and the objections to the plan, and we are transparent about that and will be transparent about that in the submission to the Secretary of State. We are proposing a report which we believe will receive the approval of the Secretary of State, subject to examination in public. We have taken significant advice on the issues that have been raised, and it is perfectly within our right to take a different view as the local minerals authority than those responding to the consultation, and we have been clear about where we have done that in the proposition to the Secretary of State.
Councillor Kinsella, please.
Thank you, Chair. Building and adding to that, that point that's just been made, the paper is correct in saying at Regulation 18 draft planning stage that there were lots of weaknesses with regard to climate change. And following extensive representation from individuals and climate change groups, the updated Regulation 19 pre-submission draft plan was much improved. However, the issue relating to climate change remain. The consultant commissioned by Derbyshire Climate Change Coalition noted, and I quote, "The plan remains unsound in some parts, principally on the grounds of lacking consistency between policies and therefore not being effective. Our main concern relates to the implementation of..."
Councillor Kinsella, I understand that you're talking from that area, but what is that? How is that a technical question? It is a
technical question because you'll see when I get to the end there is a specific request and ask around changing some of the wording in the report. So it is a technical question
but I am aware, Councillor Kinsella, that you cannot change the report at this stage in any case. So this is how it's going to be submitted.
Well, okay. So I'll not ask the question at this point. I'll ask the question at the second stage then. Is that acceptable?
Thank you. Could I have a proposal, please? Councillor Rennick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to propose this. It's been a long time in the making. There's been several stages. I'd like to also just say thank you to officers who've worked tirelessly, who have dealt with many representations over the Regulation 18 and 19, and commend this House to this Chamber to actually approve the submission to the Secretary of State. And just for the avoidance of any doubt, at the submission and the hearings will enable public to speak on any questions. At the moment, this is the submission. This paper is about submitting the approval to submit to the Secretary of State by the Planning Inspectorate. There'll be no changes made in any debates today. The only next stage will be at the examination in the public, which public entitled to attend.
Councillor Ford, please.
Thank you, Chair. As Chairman of the JCC, obviously working very closely with officers and members from both this authority and Derby City Council, I'd just like to thank everybody for the immense amount of work that's been put into getting this report ready to submission, and those people who responded to the consultations during the Section 18 and 19 regulations. So thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to second.
Councillor Fordham, please.
Thank you, Chair. I should say, just out of transparency from the outset, it is my intention to vote against the plan and the report. If we start at 2.3, the plan sets out priorities for delivering sustainable mineral developments through its vision and strategic objectives. It then goes on, where there are concerns, as it were, they're aimed at avoiding, minimising and mitigating. That's a bit like saying we're going to be good, poor and unsuccessful. We're not seeking to avoid the adverse impacts, we're just trying to minimise or mitigate them. Given that there are properties where climate change has become real and flooding is live, that have gone from a 2020 value in Chesterfield of 100,000 down to £10,000 this week on an open auction. We really are playing with fire with this poor level of ambition in this report, given that given that most people accept that climate change is real, and I'm very aware that this council didn't recognise there was a climate emergency, I think it's just a bit of a crisis. I want to go back to the specifics of what this says, because there's a bit of a dissing job going on. If you go to 218 and 219, where Historic England have listed a number of fundamental objections, we then essentially say, fundamentally, we don't accept that they're being realistic or relevant. It's quite a dismissing of a statutory body with a statutory consultation role. for us to say that actually fundamentally their objections aren't relevant. It really is quite serious. If you go to the submission of issues raised in this report under Appendix 4, climate change is raised, the objections about the supply of aggregates, Historic England in relation to quarrying, in relation to mitigating impacts, that our mitigation is unsuccessful and not sufficient, the reducing of quarrying, Pink National Park concerns, the supply of fossil fuels, which we are happy to continue, mineral safeguarding, no, we're not really going on that. We have noted that Chesterfield Borough Council don't like it, and we're going with that, that's fine. But when it comes to planning regulations, we're rejecting water-based restoration, we're rejecting the limiting of site extraction, we're rejecting restoring to dry use afterwards, we're rejecting planning restoration as aspect 2, but the list is grim. I have to say that it's quite easy to sit here and vote for this. But the consequences when people are flooded in their homes, when cement, we are the 5th largest provider of cement in this country, and this is our response. We'll do our best, but when it comes to it, we will overtly ignore by mitigation or amelioration. I find it embarrassing that we have such a document before us. The level of dismissal of statutory bodies who are statutory consultees by this council, we should hang our head in shame, and I will willingly and actively vote against it.
Councillor Major, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Nobody on this side of the Secretary chamber denies climate change, and we know our responsibilities, and we definitely know, and I'm definitely aware, that we need to move towards a circular economy, one which avoids the need to dig vast amounts of things out of the ground to make our economy tick. But the matter is that we do need infrastructure, we do need infrastructure investment, we do need to build things. We are reliant on the construction sector to build homes, to build schools, to build hospitals, to build railway lines, to build roads, and it requires us to have virgin materials that are currently dug out of the ground. And we're probably one of the most important places in this country for providing those materials, which gives us security in a world which is no longer secure. And I would encourage Councillor Fordham and others to go meet some of the mineral providers in Derbyshire and see what sustainable practices they are doing, because it's quite impressive what some of them are doing, and the practices that they do in terms of health and safety compared to elsewhere in the world. And it's certainly not in the best interest of the planet and climate change for us to say we're not willing to dig stuff out of the ground in our country, but we're willing to dig things out of the ground in Brazil and ship it all the way around the world and use that instead. That's just exporting our emissions, and we need to take responsibility for it. And if you really want to reduce the amount of things we dig out of the ground to use, you need to change demand. You need to change our economy to become a circular economy, not a cradle-to-grave economy, and that's the way you do it. While there's demand, I think we have a responsibility to make sure that we are delivering the supplies that will keep our economy growing and also keep us secure in a very uncertain world, Chairman.
Well said. Thank you. Councillor Kinsella, please.
Yeah, so as I was saying, there have been some changes to the report, and some of those are very positive. But I think it's incorrect to say, as it does in the report does in 2.11, many of the problems made at Regulation 18 consultation were resolved at the Regulation 19 pre-submission draft plan, and were taken into account. Updated evidence and strengthening the policy to ensure climate change is given the appropriate weight in considering proposals for mineral development. I think that's contested. It's been contested through the consultation period, and clearly isn't the case about how we can still reduce the amount of emissions produced by this industry. And it also fails to recognise some of the changes since January 2023. So it doesn't recognise the new national determined contributions. That's the UK's submission to reduce their their emissions as part of the Paris Climate Agreement. It doesn't recognise the government's new carbon budget, and it doesn't recognise the revised national planning policy framework that is going to strengthen issues around climate change. So there's a lack of recognition of those issues that have come up since 2023. And finally, the report also failed to make any acknowledgement of the case. It was Finch, the Horse Hill Court, at Court of Appeal. It was a judgment in 2022. This concerns the successful challenge by a local group where Surrey County Council failed to take into account the full climate impact of granting an oil development planning permission, and this is in specific regard to Scope 3 emissions. Therefore, while welcoming the proactive approach taken by the Council in the light of the Court of Appeal case, I ask that the policy, SP2, is strengthened to recognise the use of fossil fuels, particularly the Scope 3 emissions. And I would welcome any comments on that and whether that's something that the Council would consider doing.
I have no more indications you would like to round up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as I say, anything now will be directed via the submission to the Planning Inspectorate. But I just want to say that the aggregates industry is a key industry for this country nationally. And it happens to be dominant in Derbyshire, and we, very much support our industry. It employs thousands of people. And also, I would implore Councillor Fordham to take up the offer to go and see the industry locally. All our local industries have come together to form the Peak Cluster, which is one of the biggest carbon capture and storage projects that this country will have seen, and all this funded by themselves. So the industry know absolutely that they need to play their part in climate change. And recycling, this year or last year saw the biggest recycling of aggregates. So the industry is moving. And I think from a point of ignorance, Councillor Fordham ought to really actually go and explore the things that they're doing before actually making insinuations that they don't care about the community locally, when actually, unfortunately, minerals occur where they are. If they extract them out of Derbyshire because we're blessed with them in our area. And things like limestone and the aggregates from lime actually integral to toothpaste, medical, high-end steel, horse feed. Limestone is in all sorts of applications that's actually critical to our economy and to our well-being. So we can't dismiss this. Now, this report actually has been taking a number of years. It's very formulated. There's lots of guidance. We don't just pluck out of thin air where we think how much extraction we should have in this area. It's quite detailed, technical. And we have listened and we have made significant changes from the Regulation 18 to Regulation 19. We do know we've got some statements of common ground with the Historic England. Incidentally, very interesting that an organisation who actually relied on the stones of Derbyshire to build their fine properties has some issues with this. Maybe when they want the repairs in 100 years, they might think a little bit about how this stone is extracted and be a bit more sympathetic. So we have tried to actually meet in the middle somewhere. We're still in discussions with these. This will be ironed out. A lot of the mitigations that some of the statements of common ground brought up will be addressed during the major planning applications as they come forward. And again, they'll be discussed at public inquiry for those who wish to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could we move to vote then, please? Have all those voted wish to? Okay, the recommendations have been approved. Thank you. The next business item 9 is the honorary Freeman of the County. The Managing Director to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This report is to ask Council to consider in principle the conferring of the title of Freeman of the County on Albert Keir in recognition of his achievements during his life and career. Some of his considerable achievements are set out in the body of the report, and Council are to note that if they do agree in principle to nominate Albert as honorary Freeman, then there would be a necessity to make that decision formally and to confer the title at a specially convened meeting at a date to be agreed in the future. So the recommendations are set out in section 8 of the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any such questions? No? Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Sutton.
I'm happy to propose this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. A second, please. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Yes, delighted to second this. Albert's a remarkable man, 99 years old, fought valiantly in World War II. We've seen him on a few occasions, and indeed he's worked here in County Hall for a number of years, many years ago as well. So I'm absolutely delighted we're able to honour this great man, in even if it is in such a small way like this. He is truly one of Derbyshire's most astonishing people. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or observations on the paper? No? Can we move to the vote then, please? Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. Those recommendations have been approved. The next report, item 10, is the appointment of 2 co-opted audit committee members. The Director of Finance to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the appointment of 2 co-opted independent members to the Council's Audit Committee. Having independent members on the Audit Committee is in line with best practices set out by SIPFA in their position statement 2022. Recruitment took place this summer where an interview panel recommended David King and Ruth Marchinson for the position of co-opted independent members of the Audit Committee. In line with this recommendation, the report today recommends the appointment of David and Ruth to the positions outlined in the report. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions of a technical nature.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No. Could I have a proposer then, please? Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the officer has said, the procedure has been followed in terms of these selection procedures and so forth. This is simply a formal recommendation to Council to agree the appointment. So I so move.
Councillor Nelson, please.
Thank you. I'd like to second the recommendations in this report. Thank you.
Are there any observations or questions on the paper? No. Can we move to the vote then, please? Okay, that looks pretty unanimous. Those recommendations have been approved, and thank you. Item 11, the extension of the term of office of the independent person appointed under the Localism Act 2011. In the hands of the Director of Legal and Democratic Services, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This report seeks approval from Council to extend the term of office for Mr Ian Orford as independent person under the Localism Act 2011 for a further 4-year period from 3rd of February 2025. Members will be aware that the Council is obliged to appoint an independent person under the Act, whose main role is to assist with the consideration of complaints that members have breached the Code of Conduct. Mr Ian Orford was appointed by Council on the 3rd of February 2021 as an independent person for a period of 4 years, following a process of public advertisement and application. His term of office will therefore expire on the 2nd of February 2025. During his tenure, Mr Orford has gained knowledge and experience of the procedure for dealing with Code of Conduct complaints and has worked well with me in my role as monitoring officer, as well as with the Governance, Ethics and Standards Committee. The committee supports the extension of his term of office for a further period of 4 years, commencing on the 3rd of February 2025, and it's proposed that Council formally approves this extension today. Members will also note in the report that we have a vacant reserve independent person role, and I can confirm that the lack of someone in that role has not presented any difficulties in terms of the ability to deal with code of conduct complaints. However, it is intended to retain the role and seek to recruit to it in due course so that the council has cover in the event that Mr Orford is unable to act. But also we do need to have a succession plan in place when Mr Orford's second term of office expires, assuming council is happy to formally approve it today. The recommendation is on page 75 of the agenda pack, and as ever, Chair, I'm very happy to take any technical questions on the report.
Are there any such technical questions? No. Could I have a proposer then, please? Councillor Swan. Oh.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move the report, and while doing so, I'd like to express my appreciation for Mr Orford's service until this point.
Councillor Gillett, please.
Worked with Mr Orford. I'd like to second the report and endorse what Councillor Swan has said and thank him for the work he's done over the last few years as well.
Thank you. You just pipped you, Rob. Are there any observations on the paper? Questions? No, so we can move to the report. Move to the vote then, please. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Those recommendations have been approved. Item 12, minor changes to the Constitution. In the hands of the Director of Legal and Democratic Services, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. This is a procedural report that Council will be familiar with to notify Council that I've made an amendment to the Constitution under delegated powers. Following the decision of Cabinet on the 25th of July, amended terms of reference for the Health and Wellbeing Board that reflect the new areas of focus for the joint local health and wellbeing strategy have been included within the Council's Constitution. In addition, two minor changes have been made to reflect the fact that the role of Senior Information Risk Officer has been moved on an interim basis to the Director of Digital, and that a delegation in the Constitution relating to the information technology strategy now also sits with the Director of Digital. As members will be aware, I have the authority to make such amendments, but must report them to Governance, Ethics and Standards Committee and then through to Council to note. Governance, Ethics and Standards Committee received a report on the 10th of October, and I'm asking Council to note the amendments today. The recommendation is on page 81 of the agenda pack, and again, I'm happy to take any technical questions, Chair.
Are there any such technical questions? No. Okay, then go propose them, please. Councillor Swan.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to move that report.
Well done, Robert. Councillor Flackley.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second the report.
Any questions or observations? If not, can we move to the vote, please? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Those recommendations have been approved. Item 13, the temporary appointment of the Executive Director and Director of Children's Services. It's in the hands of the Managing Director to introduce the report, please.
Councillor Fraser, motion, please, Chair. To move that under Section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that in the view of the nature of the business, that if members of the public were present, exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2, 3 and 6 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 would be disclosed to them, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Paragraph 1, information relating to any individual. Paragraph 2, information which is likely to reveal the identity of any individual. Paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. And paragraph 6, information which reveals that the authority proposes to give under any enactment a notice under which or by virtue of which requirements are imposed on a person or make an order or direction under any enactment. So I propose the motion, Chair, that we consider this either at the end of council in closed business or move so to now.
Have I got a second for that, please? Councillor Burfield.
Yeah, happy to second.
Okay, that's a motion that's been proposed and seconded. Could you give us some advice on this? From where I'm at, I don't believe this is an exempt item. So from that perspective, we can either have a debate about this or move straight to the vote if nobody wants to speak. So I shall open it to the floor. Does anybody want to speak on this motion? No? No? So we just move to the vote then. Okay. Okay, come on then.
Thank you, Chair. It just might be very helpful for me to just give some advice to Council, and obviously members will be very, very familiar with the motion to move into private session. We do that occasionally in Cabinet and we do that occasionally in other committee meetings. This particular report is on the open public part of this particular agenda. It is a report for Council to note that an appointment has been made. In terms of it being on the public agenda, I am confident as monitoring officer that that is appropriate. In terms of the test for members to apply, should you wish to consider going into private session, you need to be assured that there is exempt information that needs to be debated in the chamber, to which the public needs to be excluded. As I say, this report is for noting, it is not for debating wider issues in connection.
So to clarify, at this moment we're not voting actually on the temporary appointment. We are, other recommendations, we are actually voting on the motion that's been put forward by Councillor Fordham. Councillor Fordham?
Am I able to speak on my motion, Chair? Thank you, Chair. I am very aware that what I say and what we discuss is sensitive, and I have spoken to the legal officer in advance of this meeting.
I'm just going to warn you myself now, because I do believe that if you're going to stray off anything that's not in the report, that could be looked at and you could find yourself with serious problems. This is not to discuss the report, this is to discuss why you feel this ought to be an exempt item. Understood. Not about the report itself, but just general ideas why you think it should be exempt.
Indeed. I understand, Chair, and I realise the seriousness of the issues I'm alluding to and raising whilst not compromising the Council nor myself. I think it does relate to an individual. I think, in fact, the paper relates to two individuals. I think it does reveal the identity of one individual. We are aware of the identity as a collective body of the second individual. I think in relation to the other items, in relation to the finances and the consequences of those members of staff, I think that is business that should be discussed in private, not in public. And I will say just this, Chair, which I'm confident is within your guidance. It's often said that we've had many reports like this. In my 3.5 years on this council, and in fact on my service of 8 years on 2 other councils, I've never been aware of an appointment at this level where there is already a sitting incumbent.
That has got nothing to do with whether or not it should be going to exempt.
That is
and I knew what you were going to do, that's why I warned you first. So you could stop at this moment in time, please sit down and we'll move to the vote, because you're going off the actual recommendations and what the paper's about.
But the paper identifies people by...
This moment we're voting on whether or not to make it exempt, and that doesn't make it exempt in one form or another, does it? You know it doesn't. You just want to say it.
No, I disagree, Chair.
Can we move to the vote, please? Okay, thank you. That's not unanimous, but it's quite high. The motion has been lost, and we now move back to the paper. Can I have a seconder, please? No. Oh, no, sorry. Mr. Alexander, would you like to carry on?
Thank you, Chairman. So this report is to note the appointment of Alison Noble on a temporary basis to the role of Executive Director of Children's Services and the officer having statutory responsibility for the Director of Children's Services, DCS, under Section 18 of the Children Act 2004. The requirement for this temporary appointment arises from the ongoing absence of the substantive post holders. Members will be aware of the importance of this Executive Director role as it covers not only the range of services within the department, but it also holds the statutory responsibility as Director of Children's Services. Whilst an internal appointment as Statutory Director of Children's Services was made initially, this was not sustainable for anything other than a limited period. And in order to ensure sufficient capacity and capability, Alison Noble has been appointed on a short-term basis. Members will note that as this is a temporary Chief Officer appointment, then I was able to make this decision in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Appointments and Conditions of Service Committee. I have done so, and Alison Noble commenced in role on the 5th of November. As this is a Chief Officer role, the appointment is required to be noted by Council, and this is set out in the report recommendation in paragraph 8 of the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any such questions on the report? Councillor Dixon, please.
Thank you for bringing this report. I think Ali's actually left the room, which most likely is appropriate. I would have made some joke about Derbyshire's a bit like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. But I'm sure we welcome her coming back into the Derbyshire family and the wealth of experience she will be bringing to the team. But despite that, I'd like to ask the Managing Director, we do have serious concerns about children's services. And despite what we heard yesterday, where it seemed to be everybody else's fault, I'd like to point out the second substantive paragraph of the Ofsted report that highlights changes to...
Sorry, Councillor Dixon, we're talking about this report, which is about a temporary promotion, not about what it says in any other report. I think.
No.
No, does it say in this report?
It's about this report, yeah. What I'm saying is that this report has been put in place in order to staunch a gap that we now have in the management structure within children's services. Substantially, at the moment, 2 out of the 4 senior directors are not in the building. My worry, given that we've had an Ofsted report that was followed, and also a very damning Ombudsman report, and with the papers that have come out today show that children's services expenses are still spiralling out of control. I wanted to ask the Managing Director whether this is sufficient measure to tackle the management and structural issues we have in children's services.
That's got nothing to do with this paper. This is all about...
Yes, it has.
It's about promoting an individual into a role. And that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at anything else.
To enable...
Whether that's... Sorry, I think I'm speaking, and I don't interrupt anybody else normally. But as far as I'm aware with this report, and I have read it, it's about filling a gap that we've got, and a statutory gap at that. We can't not do it. We have to have a statutory role. So it doesn't matter whether we're 2 or 3 poor people. Yes, if we're people missing, that is important. However, it's a discussion point, not a technical question to the officer. I'm sorry, it's not.
Sorry.
So I'm going to move on from that.
Chair, no. I think the thing is, it's to ensure it has sufficient capacity and capability. I'm asking, do you think this report does that?
Absolutely. Exactly. Head of paid services responsible for the staff.
Emma, are you happy to?
3 days.
Excuse me, have you put your sign up? No. So don't talk, please. Yes, if you want to, Emma.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the question. This report covers the statutory responsibility and executive director responsibility for children's services. I am satisfied that the arrangements that are being put in place with respect to the executive director and director of children's services role, that this report provides sufficient and suitable capability and capacity for the department. You can see that in section 4.1 of the report, I have reviewed a range of options, and I have also sought views from professionally qualified individuals, from the LGA, from the regional DCS support group, and I am satisfied that these arrangements are suitable. Councillor Dixon is asking me a wider question with respect to the wider management structure. This report doesn't cover that question. I would be happy to discuss that with Councillor Dixon outside of this meeting.
Thank you. Are there any technical questions about the report?
In item 4, alternative options considered. It says a number of alternative options were considered, including continuing internal acting up arrangements. So that would be a executive director and 4 deputies, effectively, with one of those 4 acting up. So that would be 5 people. How many staff, once this is noted and approved, are on our payroll in those 5 roles? Is it 5 or 6?
I'll leave that one with you, I think.
I'm afraid I'm not sure I quite followed the question, but just to be clear, this paper covers providing capacity for the executive director and statutory DCS role. Within the wider department, there are suitable and sufficient arrangements across that management team. And, Chair, I think I'd be straying beyond this report in the same way that I responded to Councillor Dixon if I was to respond any further at this point. But again, I'm happy to pick those details up with Councillor Fordham outside of this meeting.
Could I have a proposal, please? Thank you. Seconder? Councillor? Thank you. Are there any observations or questions on the report? No? Can I move to the vote then, please? Okay, thank you. I think most people have voted. The recommendations have been approved. Item 14, decisions taken as a matter of urgency and key decisions and special urgency. In the hands of the Director of Legal and Democratic Services, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. This is the standard report that members will be familiar with, and it is simply to note the recommendation is on page 93 of your agenda pack.
Councillor Lewis, please.
Happy to move the recommendation, Chairman.
Councillor Spencer.
I'll second those, Chairman.
Are there any observations or questions on the report, please? No? Can we move to the vote then, please? Okay, thank you. Those recommendations are approved. And we move to item 15, elected members' questions. The first question is from Councillor Fordham to Councillor Lewis. Councillor Fordham, please.
Thank you, Chair. Over the last 3.5 years or 7.5 years, the leader has been an active champion for more funding for Derbyshire County Council. How successful has that advocacy and lobbying been?
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Fordham, for your question. County Council's network raises the profile of local government finance and the challenges faced by local authorities. This has led to national debates and extra money for the County Council, for example, additional money for social care in 24 and 25. Also, the government is committed to the review of how local authorities are financed, and we will continue to lobby government for extra money for the County Council.
Thank you. Have you got a supplementary?
I do, Chair. I'm a little bit surprised by the lack of content in that answer. Essentially, I think he's saying that what he succeeded, and what he hasn't succeeded has failed, and that actually over the last 7.5 years, what the national government has done is what we've swum with and coped with, and he's agreed with those cuts and the devastation of local government, including the very abolition of those words from a government department. I'm sure he won't agree, but does he agree with me that that's a pretty lame report?
Councillor Lewis, please.
Know where to go with the question I was asked, basically, so it was a pretty daft question to start with.
Question 2 is from Councillor Fordham to Councillor Lewis, please.
A little more grounded, perhaps. The county has a tree planting scheme across Derbyshire. Would the portfolio holder, or the leader in this context, consider making the scheme more devolved and asking councillors to help identify locations and opportunities for tree planting in each individual decision? And to ask what proportion of the trees planted thus far are fruit or nut trees?
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. That's a much better question, and one I can really get on board with and provide a decent answer to, Councillor Fordham. So, as part of this Council's hugely successful Million Trees project in November 2023, which was successful in our proposal to government to develop Derbyshire's I get the numbers, but it's well over 500,000 at this point. We expect that we will get to our target well before 2030, and we are going to be ambitious to continue with that as a programme, and maybe try and extend it to 2 million trees if we can. So England's community forests are in and around large towns and cities, providing urban, economic and social regeneration. If you don't know, if you're not familiar with the Heartwood scheme, I hope you are, but I'm sure you will be. It covers the eastern side of the county, so Bolsover, North East, Chesterfield, Amber Valley, and Derby City, Erewash, and links up with the National Forest in the south. And of course, just over the border in Nottinghamshire, we have another community forest that stretches down there. So it actually a considerable swathe of the East Midlands Combined Authority area. It's called Heartwood because of its location, obviously, and it will occupy a central position, as I say. It was the Greenwood Community Forest I was thinking of in Nottinghamshire, and it'll provide that missing link to join up geographic areas of approximately 289 square miles, with communities along its eastern border of the county and areas in the south of the county, as I've listed already. The Heartwood Community Forest is fully funded by revenue and capital grants from the government's Trees for Climate programme. The initial grant period is for 2 years until 26. Is included in the government's comprehensive spending review that is currently underway. Work in 24 and 25 has concentrated on setting up the Heartwood Community Forest team and developing woodland creation schemes on council-owned land and with private landowners as well. And there was a call for action that went out around that on social media not so very long ago. The team expected to plant in excess of 50 hectares of new woodland and hedgerows by the 31st of March 2025. Significant projects are planned at Markham Vale North Tip and at Ripley Pit Top and Greenway as well. The Heartwood staff and team would welcome the help and support of councillors, of course, right across Derbyshire, and in identifying landowners, parish councils, community groups, any other land ownership interests as well, that might be interested in planting trees on their own land right across their divisions and wards. The Heartwood team can be contacted at the email address heartwood@derbyshire.gov.uk. Tree species planted are predominantly native broadleaf trees and shrub species such as oak, hornbeam, silver birch, hazel, blackthorn and holly. And a number of community orchards have been planted as part of the Million Trees project as well. And there's a lot of other activity taking place across the county as well. Myself and Councillor Cupid did a little bit of tree planting in my village on the village green with some donated fruit trees there, and what is commonly known as the orchard on the village green. And yeah, so in appropriate location, the Heartwood Community Forest can also support the development of new community orchards, which can incorporate a wide variety of fruit and nut tree species. I hope that was helpful. I know it was comprehensive. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Fordham, have you got a supplementary question?
Just to follow, and the leader will be aware of my partial interest in fruit trees, or rather one specific fruit tree in particular, and which I'm very grateful he planted and spliced on his own land. But I just think that on this issue of trees, when it comes to the community understanding why it's so important and what difference it can make, that there could be a greater programme of devolving amongst councillors here in this chamber and giving communities open access to, if you want a tree and you can plant it, if you could plant 5 or 10. I think that sort of approach would enable a greater understanding of the importance of our woodland. And I don't think we've grasped that nettle fully, and I think the way lies open for councillors and communities to do more.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Fordham. No, you're quite right. I think that's not a bad idea, actually, and shall certainly have a conversation with officers about how we can facilitate trees being perhaps granted to councillors for individual projects on that basis, or something like. Councillor Fordham will know that my obsession with orchards and apples is absolute, so I'm very keen to support any projects like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 3 is from Councillor Fordham to Councillor Spencer.
If it's helpful, given time, Chair, and given the announcement that we're on a committee anyway, I'm happy to withdraw the question and deal with it directly with the Deputy Leader.
That's fine. Thank you. Question 4 is from Councillor Kinsella to Councillor Dale, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman annual review makes damning reading, with an increase in complaints and complaints upheld, particularly within children's services. However, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Most parents and carers seek redress through the appeals process. Typical councils, including Derbyshire, lose 98% of those appeals. Taking over a year from appeal to decision, not only is this a financial and emotional burden on family, not only is the financial and emotional burden on families intolerable, but it also wastes vast amounts of taxpayers' money. Many parents and carers that have spoken to me and have believed that the extended bureaucratic tribunal process is a way of rationing access to special needs education. Do you agree with this view, or is it just that the cases that the SEND team, or is it the case that the SEND team have a catastrophic misunderstanding of SEND law?
Councillor Dale, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Kinsella, for your question. Can I start by making clear that we have been and we continue to apologise to families for the issues within our SEND system, and that an increasing number have felt the need to formally complain, including going to the Ombudsman. We recognise that the SEND system in Derbyshire has not been working well, enough by any means, and we have been taking a number of actions to seek to improve our performance across the partnership, including particularly our communication and engagement with families. But this work will take time for the impact to be felt. We also regret that some families feel the need to pursue appeal decisions made by the partnership, but it is the appropriate legal mechanism for them to seek redress and change. And as was hopefully explained yesterday, the reasons for disagreement between the partnership and parents are much more complex than I feel you are giving credit for in your question. I'd actually go a step further to say that I find your rather patronising and antagonistic choice of language pretty unhelpful too, and would add that committed members of our SEND service work extremely hard in very challenging circumstances and do not deserve to be spoken about in such a way. I've never met a single person who works within our service who isn't passionate about trying to improve the lives of some of our most vulnerable children, and I really hope you will reconsider your choice of words. In answer to the specifics of your question, firstly, the decisions which are made, which are the subject of tribunal appeals, are not made by the SEND team. They are made by multi-agency panels made up of professional officers, health colleagues, educational psychologists, school head teachers, and SENCOs, among others. So your accusation of not understanding SEND legislation actually extends well beyond our own officers. The panel makes its decision on the basis of relevant legislation and the SEND Code of Practice, and the professional advice and evidence before them, provided by those who know the child best, or have spent the most time with them, or written relevant reports on them, such as educational psychologists. They will always seek to make a decision which, in their professional opinion, is in the best interests of the child. With regard to tribunals, as I've said, these are the proper legal process open to parents where they disagree with the panel, and we must afford them that right. We are not responsible for waiting times for tribunals, and that's a HM Courts and Tribunals Service matter. However, we will always seek to work with parents to find a resolution before the case gets to tribunal, or to reduce those waiting times wherever possible. Around 2/3 of the tribunals in Derbyshire are around provision and placement, and this is something we are trying to address in terms of the £11 million investment to create 300 additional special school places. But in some cases, there is simply a profound disagreement between the parents and the panel about what type of placement is sufficient to meet needs, which cannot easily be overcome. For example, the panel may believe, based on the evidence before them, that a child's needs can be met in a mainstream setting with additional support, whereas parents may believe that a special school place is required. Panels are legally bound to take decisions in the best interest of the child, and they are not taken lightly. A decision to place a child in a specialist setting when it is not felt it is required, with a peer group whose needs may be sufficiently greater than their own, can have a profound impact on the rest of that child's life, affecting their educational outcomes, affecting their preparation for independence at adulthood, and even affecting their future employment prospects. These are not, as your question implies, solely debates about finances, but what is in the best interest of the child in the panel's professional opinion, based on all the evidence before them. What's more, it is the SEND Code of Practice that asks that we make decisions that are compatible with the efficient use of resources. It's not our fault, as local authorities, nor the law itself, that HM Courts and Tribunals Service seems to disregard this aspect in their interpretation of the law. And the government does need to step up to provide much greater clarity on this issue for all involved, as part of the wider reforms that are needed and which I'm pleased the new government are talking about. It's not local authorities, but the laws and the parameters set by national government that we have to operate within that requires there to be some financial context for the decisions that are made. I hope you'll agree, though, based on what I've said and what you hopefully heard yesterday at the members' briefing, is that the situation for local authorities is pretty unenviable, and that we are in a classic rock and a hard place situation, torn between meeting the wishes of parents, trying to decide objectively what is in the best interests of the child, and being held to account by government over the financial mess the system is in, which frankly has never been of our making. Thank you, Chair.
Have you got a supplementary question? Okay.
Yeah, I did attend the briefing yesterday, and I don't think anyone could fail to be impressed with the humility and the commitment of the officers to try and resolve some of these difficult issues. However, and I have people contacting me, I have residents contacting me, and I have evidence of tribunal rulings where Derbyshire have not complied with the code of practice. DCC have a statutory duty that they just simply can't afford to deliver. And I think my question would be, and I'm grateful for the briefing yesterday, but my question would be, based on the discussions at the meeting yesterday, particularly at the issue around carers and carers forums, how will you work more effectively with those carers and carers forums, not just informing them, but actually co-producing some of the solutions? And linked to that is, how will members be involved in assessing the performance of children's service around this particular area? So what engagement will we have as members, and what performance information will we be presented with?
Councillor Dale, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, yeah, interesting supplementaries, and happy to cover both of those. So, in terms of carers forums, the first thing to say is that the Derbyshire Parent Carer Voice has recently been re-established. They have a fantastic chairperson and a new executive team who are very much engaged with us, meeting regularly with senior officers. They will be present on the SEND Improvement Board, which is being set up and will be independently chaired as a result of the inspection. So they're very much involved at that senior level, and I'm very keen that we work with them to hold some focus groups with parents, to work in a much sort of better two-way communication and engagement with parents, so that they feel that they are being listened to, and that was very clear in the Ofsted inspection. And sometimes the system can feel far too adversarial, and we're very keen to break that down. So absolutely, we are committed to working much closer with parents and trying to, we're not going to be able to solve every single case or meet every single parent's wishes, but we do need to better engage, and we're absolutely committed to that. So I'm more than happy to give that assurance that we will be doing that and working through the Derbyshire Parent Carer Voice to do that. In terms of members' engagement, just to highlight that I'm very happy to do another one of those sessions that we did in a few months' time and see where we're going, and keep doing those for all members, so all members are cited on what's happening. We will have the SEND Improvement Board. I think the first meeting is next week, as I've said. We've got an independent chair. There'll be representation from both myself and Councillor Patton on behalf of our group, if you like, and there will be opposition representation as well from the main Labour group. So there will be some elected member input directly into that improvement work. But I'm very happy, whether that's through the all-member briefings that we've already run, or whether it's through one of the scrutiny committees, I'm very happy to keep Cabinet cited. From my perspective, we all need to have some oversight to this, and that is absolutely what is required moving forward. If we're going to be serious about improving the services, we need to work constructively together and try and deliver that. So very happy with that as well, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. Question 5 in the hands of Councillor Kinsella, please.
Thank you, Chair. Following the proposed redesign of residential care and care homes, I was shocked to see that Ada Belfield in Belper is one of the threatened homes. Ada Belfield, built at a cost only 4 years ago of £11.5 million, offers both high-quality dementia care and community support beds, the very type of support that the administration are claiming justifies the redesign. What, on average, will be the additional weekly care cost to new service users, and how many old and vulnerable people will be denied high-quality, affordable care as a result of these cuts?
Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm taking these adult care ones in Councillor Hoy's absence today, so do bear with me. You and I have had a few exchanges about this over social media of late. So it's important that I reiterate to you that no decisions will be made until Ada Belfield until after public consultation and analysis of all of the feedback and recommendations made to Cabinet, which will occur next year. It's vital, of course, that we hear people's views as part of the consultation. I would encourage people to get involved through the various methods, the questionnaires, virtual sessions, and contacting the stakeholder engagement and consultation team. You heard the answer I gave about Bentley earlier, and how we work with DCHS and are often guided, in fact, by them and where community support beds go. That's why we're re-looking at this particular care home. So regarding care homes that the Cabinet approved for sale, if a provider takes one over, this will not be to any financial detriment to any existing residents in that home, and their contributions will remain the same under the same arrangements as well. And that's very clearly set out in the report that we had recently in the appendices in there. And as per our pledges, we will work with residents and their families and carers to support them through the process with a dedicated review team of practitioners. There are many residential care vacancies within the private, voluntary and independent sector in all areas of the county, and a full list of these were included as an appendix within the Cabinet report, the link to which we can send you and make sure that that is fed through if you are getting inquiries from residents and families or people in your local area. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Have you also mentioned a question? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that reply. I think the concern, and it was the question from Andy Billings, the public question at the outset. I think the concern is a lack of transparency, and a lot of people, as you've seen, we engaged this week over a Facebook post, and you'll see the depth of feeling, but also a lot of questions from a lot of people remain outstanding. So a lot of the questions and the issues around Ada Belfield not being sustainable, not being affordable, not being an area, not being a home of demand. I think people are just asking for the evidence for that. So I think really, just to reiterate the point I've made, it would be good to see a breakdown for these particular care homes. I think that would help the consultation process because people could see the validity of the argument. But I think without that financial information around particular care homes that are subject to closure or privatisation, I think it's a bit difficult for people to make a decision. And I think there's a degree, as you'll note from the posts that were made yesterday, there's a degree of distrust. So I would really welcome that information.
Councillor Lewis,
thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Councillor Kinsella. I wholeheartedly agree with you, actually, on that very front. And I'm very keen to ensure, and this is why we're talking about this finance group meeting regularly to sort of interrogate the council's finance. I think this is going to be an important element of that, because we need to understand what a council home's budget is, how much a council home is overspending by, and why that budget is being overspent. We need to dig under the skin of that and fully understand it as well. So we know all about the issues with regard to recruitment and retention of staff at our care homes. That's in common with the private sector, etc. Even though we are generally slightly better paid than most, we still have a recruitment issue. Not many people want to work in this area, and that is a driver behind some of the issues that we have, because we can't properly staff care homes, and that is then leaves us lacking in potentially in capacity in some of our care homes as well. Understanding what particular needs our care homes have, so whether is it residential care, is it nursing care, and often we find that in some places there's more of a requirement for nursing care and less of residential care, because we're looking after people in their own homes, or there are private sector placements already available for that as well. So there are lots and lots of factors that drive the cost pressures behind a lot of our care homes and our care home placement. And I'll be brutally honest with you, I ask for information about care homes and I get presented with tables that mean nothing to me. I want to be able to read and understand and look at a table that tells me exactly what I need to know from a care home. So yes, Councillor Kinsella, I will make sure that we drag those numbers out into the public domain as best we can.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Rose to Councillor Dale, please.
Thank you, Chair. There's a little bit more context in this question when I wrote it, but never mind. I note that parents and guardians were asked to sort out school places for September 2025. by the end of October 2024. How does that work for those children with specific requirements and are subject to an education, health and care plan?
Please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Rose, for your question. I believe with regard to the reference to October, you're referring to the secondary school admissions deadline. However, admissions for children and young people with education, health and care plans will be arranged by the SEND service under completely different legislation and therefore not through the general admissions process. The SEND service will contact parents and carers when their child is due to move from nursery to primary, primary to junior, junior to secondary and secondary to post-16. If parents and carers would like their child to move to a different school mid-year or outside the normal admissions times, they should ask for an emergency review of their EHCP. Parents and carers have a legal right to request a particular school or college, whether that's mainstream, special or resourced provision, is named in their child's EHCP. Once a preference has been expressed, the local authority must consult with the school or college and must name it in the HCP unless it is unsuitable for the age, ability, aptitude or SEN of the child or young person, or the attendance of the child or young person would be incompatible with the efficient education of others or the efficient use of resources. For children with an EHCP who are transitioning, the SEND service must issue a final EHCP naming the school or college that a child will be transferred to by the following national deadlines: 15th of February for children transitioning from nursery to primary, infant to junior, or primary to secondary, and the 31st of March for young people transitioning from secondary to post-16 education or year 14 placements. Thank you also for emailing me yesterday off the back of the briefing and with the case specifics, and we are going to look into that case and come back to you as soon as we can. Thank you.
Have you got a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Just quickly, thank you very much for the briefing yesterday, yourself and staff. I think it was very useful, and obviously my question refers to that issue. So things have overtaken what was going on, and I appreciate your time and words on the issue that I brought to you. So can we, with the question also that a member of the public asked, can I be certain that you and staff are going to reconsider or review where there has been some controversy which may have resulted from the issues with the Ofsted report, etc., etc. Thank you.
Councillor Dale, please.
Very happy to review the case that he referred to me. I think the issue there was that the family didn't feel they were offered any other choice than weren't consulted on the preference. So I'd find that very strange if that were the case, but we'll look at that. And in relation to the other inquiry, as I said, I'm more than happy to meet Mr. Billings. And yes, as a general commitment, we are seeking to improve things. It's not going to be a quick process. It's going to be difficult. There are lots of challenges within the system, but we are committed to working through them, as we have been over the past couple of years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're only just over just half the way through the questions. There's 30 minutes for members' questions. I don't want to make it, we've only got about 6-7 minutes left. So can the remainder of the questionnaires please not ask the question? Can we just have the answers to try and get through as many as possible? It is going to take longer than this, and we're going to have to have an extension anyway. So I'll shut up and ask Councillor Clark, would you like the answer from Councillor Lewis? Councillor Lewis, please.
I shall work on the assumption that Councillor Clark would like an answer from me, and I'll keep it as short as I possibly can as well. So this was around Jubilee Care Centre in Queen's Court. What steps Council taking to ensure residents will access services which help prevent their health deteriorating? Derbyshire Community Health Services, DCHS, have considered all health needs and confirmed these will be delivered through a mixture of outpatient clinics, community nursing care, the Urgent Treatment Centre, the Live Stronger for Longer programme, and via primary care. The Council is committed to working closely with the NHS throughout the transition and beyond to ensure local people.
Have you got a supplementary question? Okay, thank you. Question 8 from Councillor Dixon.
speak, I'm quite willing to give way on this occasion.
You'll still get a written answer, probably. Thank you. Question 9 is from Councillor Gillett, please.
I'm happy to ask, but I'm prepared to wait for the answer.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And I'm going to give Councillor Gillett an answer. Very simple answer. It's yes. I'm sure I'm going to get a supplementary in due course.
Fortunately, you've given me the answer I was expecting, so that's always helpful as well. Both the budget papers that were published in February and next week's audit papers make quite clear that the costs of running this council is substantially more than most councils, anything between 10 and 20 million pounds, and that's been going on for many, many years, it seems. And it's only now that we face the financial crisis that we're currently dealing with that they're being given a degree of urgency. And my understanding is that best practice is that you don't do major modernisation practices just to save money, because that often leads to mistakes, bad policy, and it can be clearly unsettling for staff as well. So if running this council for so many years, costing a good £10 million more than we actually have to pay each and every year, is not financial mismanagement, what is?
Councillor Spencer.
Thank you, Chairman, and I welcome the opportunity to give Councillor Gillett and everybody in this council chamber a detailed answer, which I'm going to do. The first thing is, it is unfortunate that our schedule of meetings sort of falls in the schedule it does with regard to these papers. It wasn't planned. It was the circumstances that have always prevailed with regard to the budgetary papers and the budgetary cycle of the council. And it is unfortunate they were published on the last occasion just after the meeting. They have been published today for the meeting a week on Thursday. And we will go into some detail. And you're quite right, Councillor Gillett. There is a cost differential in running this council compared to our comparator councils in the country. And as a consequence, Councillor Gillett, we are going to have to deal with that, and we have been dealing with that. And let me explain to you how. You will be aware that we put cost control measures in place, which have been tightened considerably since the figures were presented. And you will notice that in the functions of this authority. You will be aware, if you have read the paper which went to the Audit Committee, that we as an authority intend to procure the services of PwC very much focused on the issues you just articulated, the differential in costs. We're also considering setting up, call it a fiscal commission, call it a treasury commission, call it what you like. We're considering setting up a committee to go into the finer details of the issues related to the more expensive provision here in Derbyshire and elsewhere. As I'm sure you are aware, many of the functions within the authority that are costing us extra money are within adult social care and children's services. Now, we will know, as we all know, that those services are statutory. And I think the question comes, what is our expectation of statutory? And is our expectation of statutory the same as our neighbours' expectation of statutory? The reason I say that, Councillor Gillett, is our services here in Derbyshire, the same services, the same statutory services, cost the taxpayer in Derbyshire 14% more. So there are questions to be asked. Why? And I will give you an assurance today, Councillor Gillett, that we will find out why, and we will take action to address it. And I can also tell you, Councillor Gillett, that with regard to the 14% cost, which is higher than our neighbouring authorities, we need to look very closely about what is our delivery model. And if after the investigations carried out by PwC and the Fiscal Commission, or whatever you wish to call it, I don't mind what it's called, we find that we need to make changes in our delivery model, we will make them. And be assured, Councillor Gillett, I am confident that the measures we will take, and we will take those measures, hopefully with your support, we will take those measures, we will get this budget back where it needs to be. Now, that does not get away from the fact it is a huge challenge. And I just want to applaud the efforts of our staff here in Derbyshire County Council for the efforts they have made with regard to the savings target, because the performance monitoring and the budget monitoring paper that has been brought back, there are some considerable success stories in the performance data within that report. And there has been vast swathes of the organisation who have met their savings targets. And the drivers for the intensive pressure upon adult social care and children's services, in one case 15% increase, in the other case about 8% increase, is driven by demand. So how do we change that demand? How do we change that cost structure? And how do we tackle the issue that we are more expensive than our neighbours? And that work has been carried out over the last few months, or last few years in actual fact. And now we've got those facts, we have an obligation to tackle them. Now, that does not get away from the fact that I genuinely believe that government needs to cap costs of children who are vulnerable and in care of the organisation. I genuinely believe that, and hopefully you and your party will lobby for that, as we will do. But I also genuinely believe, Councillor Gillett, that our staff are trying their best to tackle this. But their definition of statutory and our neighbouring council's definition of statutory, there must be a differential. And over the coming weeks, we're going to find out what that differential is, and we are going to take action. Thank you, Chair.
Question 10 is Councillor George to Councillor Dale. Councillor Dale, please. It's okay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor George. I've spoken to 4 or 5 different media outlets over the past week or so and been featured and quoted in several different articles and features over the past week. So I think my reflections have been pretty well documented already. However, for the avoidance of any doubt, I want to once again offer my profound apologies on behalf of the partnership to any children and families who've been affected by the issues raised. We fully accept the findings of the report, and we acknowledge that the SEND system within Derbyshire is not good enough and needs to improve at a much faster rate. We recognise many of the issues Ofsted highlighted some time ago, and we've taken a number of actions over the past couple of years to try and improve our services, including restructuring the teams, giving them more clearly defined roles, investing £1 million in additional educational psychologists and admin support, improving processes, which has led to improvements in timeliness. We are much closer to the national average now than we were a couple of years ago. We've re-established the SEND Executive Board, we've created a new education partnership, we've created a new SENCO network, we've introduced inclusion panel funding, which replaced GRIP very shortly after. We've done a restructure of our inclusion support service, leading to reductions in exclusions. We've introduced the new EHC hub system and committed £11 million towards special school expansion. Our efforts are starting to show some improvements in some areas, but there is clearly a long way to go before we will get to where we need to be. And we absolutely do need to redouble our efforts to improve more quickly. But we need to be honest in acknowledging that many of the issues, as I've already said, will not be resolved overnight. Quite rightly, Ofsted do not measure activity, they measure impact, and it's essential that the improvement work we are absolutely committed to doing translates into an improvement in the experiences and outcomes of children and young people. It's a partnership responsibility, as you know, and we're committed to working across the partnership with health, schools, the public, private and voluntary sector colleagues, and most importantly, children, families themselves as part of this ongoing improvement work. And we do have a shared commitment to continue to strive to ensure all Derbyshire children have the best possible start in life, whatever their challenges and abilities. And Finally, while I recognise clearly that all elected members have an important role to play in this work, and while I acknowledge that challenge and scrutiny are vitally important, I hope that the partnership can rely on all of us across this chamber, regardless of our different politics, to work constructively together with the partnership to ensure we can deliver the improvements that we all want to see for our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor George, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and thank you for your response, Councillor Dale. There's no denying that the SEND report is damning, even in Ofsted's measured language. And they set out many failings in leadership and in management. Most of the recommendations, I think 9 out of the 13, relate to Derbyshire County Council as opposed to our health partners. And the majority of what is recommended is set out at the seat of the County Council, where leadership has been chaotic in recent years, as the report sets out. The one person who has been steadily at the helm for the last almost 8 years is Councillor Dale, as the Cabinet member, and has overseen all of these management and structural failings identified by Ofsted. I wondered if the Cabinet member wanted to use today to make clear without any equivocation his personal responsibility for creating a system that has meant, as Ofsted said, too many children and young people with SEND, their needs have not been met for too long, and whether he has considered his position.
Councillor Dale, please.
Thank you, Chair. I take issue with the question around, or the bit of the question around the majority of those recommendations relating to Derbyshire County Council. As far as I can read, most of them relate to partnership and a lack of partnership working, a lack of joined-up partnership working, which does not indicate that the County Council is responsible, but all of the partnership is responsible. There are some that reference specifically Derbyshire, and there are some that reference specifically health, but I don't think that's the majority in any way. I think most of the recommendations are actually about the whole partnership, so I dispute that point. Clearly, the report has been, extremely sobering, and it's concerning that that Ofsted have highlighted some of the issues that we've seen. But I think most of us know that there have been problems over the past couple of years, in particular, and demand has really shot up. We've seen a doubling of EHCPs in the past 7 years, and a doubling of the requests for EHCPs in the past 3 years alone. So yeah, it's absolutely unsurprising that the system is under a huge amount of pressure, and we have been, as I said earlier, taking a number of actions to try and improve things. I recognise that you may very well want me to resign, but my focus is on continuing to deliver those improvements and working across the partnership, and hopefully with all members here present today, to try and ensure that we do improve those services. And I think the reality is, while I'm focusing on getting on with the job, Labour have got absolutely no plan for what they would do differently. The most they can do is tell us to do the things that we're already doing as part of the improvement plan. And I think the reality is that the Labour Party don't actually really care about this issue. All you really care about is using our most vulnerable children as a political football to try and score points. So I think it's pretty shameful, that response. Thank you, Chair.
And next item is question 11, Councillor Dixon to Councillor Hoy, but Councillor Lewis is going to answer this question, I believe.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and thank you for your question, Councillor Dixon. The short answer, and I'll give you a short answer because I'll send you the table that I've got here because it's just much easier to deal with than this. Overall, the quantum of money that's been spent on all the listed care homes that you asked about is £12,076,200, £12,076,264.18p. If you want me to break that down by particular care homes, I can do. That's fine. Okay, but I'll send you the table. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you got a supplementary?
No, no, I don't want a supplementary. He's made my day.
Now there's a first. Question 12, in the hands of Councillor Dale to Councillor Cupid. Councillor Cupid, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Dale for your question. I think as we've been discussing separately, we are aware of the issue and the concerns on this site. There's still some legal checks underway and some ambiguities in relation to the TRO. So if it's okay, we'll feed back to you in more detail over the coming weeks, if that's okay, once we've finished that process. But if you've got a supplementary, obviously happy to answer or add it to the note.
I've got a supplementary. The town, this rear service road that's privately owned, it shouldn't be, as you know. It's the town centre businesses. And last year they were concerned because cars were blocking them. We've got the funeral directors that park the vehicles off. We've got food shops, takeaways, and of course the lorries go up and deliver. So can you give some reassurance that if they haven't got the consent, they will obtain the consent of the owners so they can carry on the enforcement team supporting these town centre businesses because of the problems that happen on that rear service road? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Cupid.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Dale. Having been out with the parking enforcement officers quite recently on a couple of occasions, I appreciate the complexities of what they deal with, and particularly, you know, town centre parking issues in places such as Shirebrook, etc. So we'll absolutely take that back, because I do understand that the enforcement took place because of requests from local businesses and residents. So, but we just need to get to the bottom of the TRO process, and then I will feed back to yourself and obviously speak to yourself and local businesses about it, if that's okay.
Thank you for that, people. That was very good. I might adopt that again, I think. The next item is a motion in the hands of Councillor Major, please. Councillor Lewis. Extend.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I'm going to move that we can extend this section of the meeting up to about an hour. Hopefully we won't use all of that hour, but this is an important debate, I think.
Can I have an undertaking that the sandwiches will not be curled or dried? This is just a show of hands then, please, on this occasion. All those in favour of extension? Okay, that's approved, and thank you. Councillor Major. Councillor
Chair, before, obviously this is an important motion, before we ask to vote on it, I would ask if Councillor Major, as part of his speech today, could make quite clear to us what he's exactly asking us to do, because as I'm sure he's aware, that the previous Conservative governments have introduced various legislation that restricts what local authorities can do and can't do in terms of some of the campaigning activities available to them. And I'd hate for him to actually ask us to do something that we can't legally do. So I think it's important that he makes it very clear during the course of the debate that what advice he has taken and what he's asking us to do.
Councillor Major.
Just to be clear, we have taken advice from the monitoring officer, and the motion is completely valid. In proposing the motion, colleagues, this motion is about standing up for the people of Derbyshire, our farmers and every resident who depends on affordable food and strong rural economy. Today, we are calling on the Labour government that has turned its back on these hard-working individuals and families with a reckless, ideological-driven budget that will devastate the livelihoods and communities across our county. We have already seen Labour's callous disregard for the pensioners, while most of us here stood together to urge government to reverse its means testing of winter fuel pay allowance. Labour councillors stayed silent. That policy risks leaving many elderly residents in Derbyshire cold and struggling this winter. This betrayal alone is shameful, but this has just been the tip of the iceberg. The Labour government's budget on the 30th of October was nothing short of an assault on Britain. It loaded the country with astonishing 40 billion extra in taxes, 70 billion extra in borrowing and spending. This isn't economic prudence, it's economic sabotage of our children and of our grandchildren. Labour's tax and spend frenzy targets everyone: pensioners, farmers, homeowners, charities, small businesses, students. But let's focus on the family farm tax. This cruel change to inheritance tax reveals relief for agriculture land, threatens the survival of family farms, the backbone of rural Derbyshire. Farmers already face soaring costs, energy price hikes and unprecedented weather. Now Labour wants to pile on by forcing families to sell their homes rather than pass them on to the next generation of farmers. This isn't just a tax on farmers, it's a tax on the national food security. And we're entering in, if not already in, a very dangerous time for Europe. Conflict and geopolitical instability are escalating. Supply chains are under strain and global food prices are volatile. Feeding our population must come first. Yet instead of safeguarding British farming, Labour priorities seem to lie elsewhere, like covering quality agricultural land with solar farms. Solar power has its place in the energy mix, but we cannot eat electricity. Derbyshire fertile land should be producing food to feed our people, not sacrificed for ill thought out energy schemes that make us more dependent on imported goods and agriculture. This short-sighted approach risks leaving the UK more vulnerable in the years to come. And let's not forget the sheer hypocrisy. Both Keir Starmer and Steve Reid explicitly ruled out introducing a tax like this. Their broken promises are a slap in the face to farmers who trusted their word. Here in Derbyshire, farmers isn't just an industry, it's a way of life. From High Peak to the Dales to Erewash, family farms sustain our economy, preserving our landscape and supply quality, affordable produce to our tables. This family farm tax will rip apart this heritage, replacing it with financial ruin and despair. It is no wonder that respected organisations like the National Farmers Union, the Country Land and Business Association have sounded the alarms. They know what's at stake: higher food prices, job losses and loss of rural vitality that could take decades to recover from. And what's Labour's response? Steve Reid, who apparently more comfortable in £420,000 designer wellies than working on a farm, has an audacity to tell struggling farmers do more with less. This tone-deaf arrogance is an assault on every farmer who gets up at dawn, rain or shine, to put food on our table. Colleagues, we cannot stand by and let this happen. This motion calls on us to demand that the Labour government reverse this disastrous policy. We must defend our farmers, protect our rural communities and fight for the future of British and Derbyshire farming. I urge every member to support this motion and send a clear message to Westminster. Derbyshire will not stand for this betrayal.
Could I have a seconder? David Taylor, Councillor Taylor, please.
I'm quite happy to second this motion. I wear my wellies, I'm an ex-farmer, and I wear my wellies with pride. And the food security problem that they're going to cause with this is immense. I mean, people are speaking at the moment with full bellies. In a few years' time, when the small family farm, I was a small family farmer, I know how hard it is. We actually made money in a year. You're thinking, my God, we've done well. Skegness, as far as I ever got on holiday, I've only gone back twice, couldn't afford it. So therefore, I'm quite happy to second this motion, and I fully support the farming community. It's needed. Thank you.
Councillor Hobson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I support this motion. I support Derbyshire farmers, tenant farmers, vets, agricultural workers, feed merchants, the animal market at Bakewell, the list goes on. 3 years ago today, my brother died in the snow rescuing pregnant ewes up in the peaks, leaving my sister-in-law to run the farm. That's a harsh reality, to go on alone with the support of family and wonderful friends in the farming community.
Councillor Spencer.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm looking forward to something coming from the other side of the room. I suspect it will not come. Having said that, Chairman, we attended the march in London last Tuesday. The biggest food donation in the history of food banks, I think it was deemed as. The BBC managed to suggest there was 10,000 farmers there. The BBC obviously can't count because the whole of the Mall was full. I think the figure would have been nearer 45,000 people. And I have to say they behaved in a dignified, kind and very reasonable fashion. I represent the biggest rural division in the county. Many, many farmers are involved. Many of those farmers are my personal friends. They're godparents to my children. And the pain and the lack of thought and consideration about a policy that has been put forward by central government is not understood by the Chancellor. It is not understood by a vast proportion of Labour politicians. Most farmers create a business over the generations of investment, time and commitment. They purchase small parcels of land and the farm grows. They rent land, and the farm has to be of a certain size to make it sustainable. Without that size, the farm is unsustainable. And what we were going to see with this policy is we're going to see farmers who have not got stacks of cash selling off parcels of land to pay death duties of some sort. The CBI have already said the calculations are completely, utterly wrong with regards to the projection income and the number of farms that will be affected. Many trade bodies have said exactly the same. And if these farms become unsustainable because of their size, they will just sell up and stop, as many farmers in the county have already done with milk production today, as a consequence of them not being paid a fair price for their milk. It went up during COVID. It crashed back down as soon as COVID was over. And we, the British public, are being, or will be, the people who pay the bill. Because be assured, food prices will go up as a consequence of these proposals. Sustainability of small family farms is down to a long-term family commitment that goes back generations. And when I see the pain and misery that is being caused and the worry and concern, these people do not drive big cars and spend thousands of pounds on expensive holidays. They work 52 weeks of the year, 7 days a week in most cases, for long hours for very little reward. And the whole ideology that sits behind with this was to get the big landowner. Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. These farms are going to be broken up and the big landowners will buy the land. Mission not accomplished. Mission destroyed by a government who's got it totally wrong. I did hear a Labour peer speak in London passionately about the way in which she was going to challenge this proposal. There are people dying already as a consequence of these proposals. Suicide rates in farming are high because of the isolation and the way they work. But be assured, Chairman, this policy will not help. I genuinely believe that if we do not maintain our ability to feed ourselves, we put our nation at risk. And we are heading towards that rapidly with this madness, absolute madness. And when I hear Labour MPs saying this is payback for the miners, I have to say that's madness as well. Because as far as I'm concerned, Chairman, this country needs to have the ability to feed the nation. We must have the flexibility built in. And some people may say, well, why should farmers be treated different? I mean, some of the rubbish on Facebook about, well, why did you buy a big tractor? They buy tractors because they need them to do the job. They buy milking powers because they need them to milk the cattle. They buy combine harvesters because they need to collect the corn from the fields. They don't buy them at £500,000 just for the hell of it. And in most cases, they're leased anyway. And we're not just talking about landowners. We're talking about small farms that rent their land. We're talking about families that have rented parcels for land for hundreds of years to produce our food. And in Derbyshire, many of those farmers are hill farmers. They've got rubbish land. They don't make thousands of pounds from commercially growing food for the country. They make a few quid by rearing sheep and cattle across the hills of Derbyshire. And I find it absolutely astonishing that this government can get it so wrong so quickly. So all I can say, Chairman, is there is an opportunity, there is a window where we can lobby for common sense to prevail. I am not suggesting that they should overturn what is... The philosophy was about getting the people who buy into farms to avoid inheritance tax. Let's be honest about that. But we're talking here about family farmers who create something for their children to produce our food. And unless we change this, Chairman, now, there is going to be a complete utter breakdown in our food provision here in the UK. And we put ourselves, our security and our country and nation at risk. So, Chairman, all I can do is ask the colleagues to support this and speak to their MPs. I've spoken to my MP already about it. I bumped into him. I found him at one last Armistice Day. But on the other hand, Chairman, that says it all. Through World War II, our farmers fed us. Never forget that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I can see that Councillor Dixon's got a hand up, so I didn't think anybody was going to contribute there for a terrible minute, but I'm glad they are. And I hope they're listening to the nature of the debate that's taking place here today. Food security is of paramount importance in this very insecure world that we live in. We have conflicts, we have all kinds of issues relating to what's going on in the world, and we need to make sure that we are self-sufficient as far as we can be in producing our own food. Farms are also custodians of our landscapes as well, and we just heard from Councillor Spencer the work that they do in terms of looking after the hill farms of Derbyshire. Derbyshire looks like it does because of those very traditional farming methods that take up the work up there. And also now switching to much more environmentally friendly ways of managing those parcels of land. Earlier this week, or was it late last week, Sir Keir Starmer, he tweeted, this week we will set out radical reforms to get Britain back to work, paving the way for the biggest overhaul of employment support in memory. One has to question how he's going to achieve this, given the nature of the budget that was recently passed by the government. So we're talking about here today agricultural business relief, now famously known as the family farm tax. But there are other elements to this, which was the business property relief, doing a similar thing, and it allowed the transmission of intact businesses to subsequent generations, allowing that retention of valued employees that work in those companies and the continuation of investment in those businesses, because you can plan on a generational scale. And that's very much like farms do as well. They have that ability because they have been traditionally protected from this. Small family farms that generate very little in profit, but have that ability to be able to sort of borrow over long periods of time. That's likely to stop. Businesses and farms could now be broken up, and we'll see investment drying up. And some of the other drivers around national insurance that we talked about today are going to have significant impacts on certain scales of businesses, relative to small businesses right across the country, as well as larger ones. It's going to affect employment as well. So as well as using that budget to raise those employer taxes for significant swathes of businesses and skewering businesses' ability to invest and retain staff, higher taxes, and changes to those inheritance taxes, and the forthcoming alterations to the regulatory landscapes as well, which is another key driver around some of the issues that businesses are going to be facing as well. That is going to stall investment in businesses. So many businesses are now having to consider their options, and this inevitably will stall the economy. It'll increase inflation. We're already seeing some signs of that of late. All those little signs are there. It'll suppress growth, and it'll suppress opportunity for huge amounts of people within our society. I've never seen such an incompetent budget as this one that's been passed recently, a complete lack of understanding of the entirety of the system there. To my mind, this is the politics of envy writ large. It's peevish, it's ideological, it's incompetent, it's driven by zealotry to target those that some on the left see as the rich or people that have assets, and we've heard that a lot of late. Just to give you some facts and figures, thank you to Councillor King who supplied these for me. Total farm businesses in the county, there are 2,125. They make up 7.1% of all businesses in the county. Quite significant when you take the all England average of 3.6%, so almost double that. So by a few districts, Derbyshire Dales has 18.7% of businesses that are farms, so they're the highest. North East Derbyshire is 8.6%, and then High Peak is 7.4%. The estimated GVA for Derbyshire from the farming sector amounts to £61 million. That's gross value added to the economy. There's been a decline in farm numbers since and during COVID, which has been concerning, down by 9.8%, so almost 10%, so quite significant. That's the equivalent of 230 farms have gone, and that means that 500 fewer people are employed. So this tax will be another significant nail in the coffin of family farms and a significant dent in our food security. And that, competing with solar farms, as another impact on food security as well, is going to drive some pretty major concerns. The majority, 98.4% of Derbyshire farms, is classed as small and employ less than 10 people. Now, across England, that is 95.8. So again, it tells you about that sort of mosaic of hill farms that we have across Derbyshire, very small farms anyway. There are no farms in Derbyshire that employ more than 50 people, so these are quite small, but nonetheless incredibly important sectors. And though we're called small because we live in a high-value area, like the Peak District National Park, etc., land is expensive, buildings are expensive, farm equipment is expensive. So many are caught in this trap of this family farm tax, many more than we've probably heard from the Treasury or from even perhaps from DEFRA. When you start looking at what assets farmers have, suddenly you're in a very different ballpark. So I'd just like to, I've lost my thread now, sorry, I'm just repeating that. Ah, yes, back page, that's why. I made some extra notes. So, I wanted to question, we heard very little from the Green Party on this particular issue, which is it's quite surprising. They're very quiet on this issue. But if you look at their policies on their websites, etc., they're very much in the same space as Labour on this. They want very, very small farms. They want them. That's just what they think they're going to get from this this family tax. It's not going to work in that way. Seen much glee and happiness among certain cohorts of the left, especially those that are keen on buying small holdings and want and wear sort of alpaca woolens and have hand-rolled vegan leather sandals, that sort of thing. And they proudly sort of display that they like to grow their leek in their allotment kind of thing. That's where there's most excitement around it. That's why this is ideologically though. But seriously, we're a population heading towards 70 million people in the UK. These small family farms will disappear, along with knowledge, and not just of growing, but of growing in an environmentally friendly way. And farms have tilted in recent years much more to that. And it's likely that that land will not, as Councillor Spencer said, will not end up staying in families or becoming small holdings. They'll be mopped up by bigger farmers. They will become more or less conglomerates across the countryside and become much more niche. And I think that is the wrong way for us. I'm going to finish on this quote, Chairman. And this was from a former Labour political advisor, John McTernan, in a tweet that he put out there. We can, he didn't, this was a quote I did on TV actually. We can do to the farmers what Thatcher did to the miners. It's an industry we could do without. We don't need small farmers. That's what we're fighting against, Chairman. So I'll end on that point. Thank you.
Councillor Dale, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try not to repeat what's already been said. Just a few points. Farming is absolutely a way of life, and the reality is it's bloody difficult. And sadly, Sue, I wasn't aware of your story about your brother. That is absolutely heartbreaking. But sadly, it's all too common in farming. And my mum maintains to this day that my dad passed through stress of dealing with the challenges of running a farm about 10 years ago. And to Simon's point, yeah, farming has a very high rate of suicide, but it also has one of the highest rates of accidents, health and safety accidents in the country. So farmers, day in, day out, put their lives at risk. They put the mental state at risk, huge periods of isolation, in very difficult circumstances, always worrying about the finances, always worrying about whether they'll make ends meet from day to day. So it is absolutely heartbreaking that the government are seeking to do this and seeking to break up everything that they have worked so hard to build up, but also their previous generations, their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, as it is. And I found it really interesting that Labour's response on all of this at the minute seems to be to suggest, and certainly the MPs that attended the meeting that Councillor Lewis and I attended in Chesterfield, with over 100 farmers and businesses raising concerns, the Labour MPs there were suggesting tax avoidance measures, so put it into a trust or gift it to your children and hope that you live for 7 years, which in itself seems absolutely ludicrous, because if a measure is introduced to try and raise tax, why is the official advice to try and then go and avoid the tax in the first place, which seems balmy. But the other point is that most, as Clarkson rightly said, farmers shouldn't have to do that. And the reality is, in terms of gifting a farm, that comes at quite a risk. My dad died before his granddad, before his dad rather, so my grandfather. If my grandfather had gifted the farm to my dad, the whole thing may have been very, very messy in terms of inheritance aspects. So I think the reality is, there'd be so much less noise in the system if they just set the rate slightly higher than it is now. £1 million is so low when you think about the value of most small farms. If they want to hit the big farmers, the Dysons, people like that, set the rate that bit higher, and most of the noise in the system would just go. But they seem, as Councillor Lewis said, ideologically absolutely tied to this proposal. And I think really what strikes me most is how much Labour in their first 4 or 5 months of government have absolutely eroded trust in government. And it's through basically lying to everyone. They've lied to so many groups of people prior to the election, only to do the absolute opposite when they come into power. You take the pensioners, they said so many times before the election they were committed to the winter fuel allowance. And what did they do? They cut it. They told farmers, Keir Starmer said himself, that losing a farm is not like losing any other business, because you'll never get it back. And there was commitments that they would not do this to farmers, and lo and behold, they've done it to farmers. To businesses, they suggested that there would be growth, and that's all they would care about. And then only, within months, they've lumbered them with a £25 billion national insurance increase that they have to muster, and that will cost jobs and cost pay as well, and livelihoods. And they lied about the no taxes on working people. These are indirectly, the national insurance contributions is indirectly a tax on working people. They've lied to students. They told them they wouldn't increase the tuition fees, and they have. And they've lied about this whole thing that is the purpose behind all of these difficult decisions that they're making, which is the £22 billion black hole. They've been repeatedly asked to publish the details of how that's been made up, and they have never done so. Even the OBR has said that they don't even recognise the vast majority of that funding. And we know that £9 billion went to the trade unions to pay their paymasters and support already very well paid junior doctors, etc. So I can't understand how they can do this and not expect that the public is extremely concerned and frustrated with them. And I really think that we as a council need to take a stand. Our responsibility is to represent our residents. Derbyshire is a rural farming county, and we absolutely must represent the farmers and support this motion today. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dixon, please.
Thank you, Chair. There is no doubt on our side about the importance of farming in Derbyshire. And I want to publicly put on record my thanks to the farmers for the work that they have done and for us here in the county. And I'm really sorry for your loss. That's terrible. I don't disagree a lot about many of the things that have been said today, praising our farmers and the tough conditions they work in. And like, you know, you quite rightly said about, you know, one of the highest suicide rates, you know, farming accidents. This is not an attack on farmers, but also I have to say, having sat here now and heard quite a few of you speak, it's become clear that this isn't a motion about farmers. This is the second time in a row that you have brought a motion to this council that is no more than a distractionary tactic to stop us talking about your recording power. And the language with which in which the motion was couched was so hysterical and confrontational that we wouldn't be able to meet together, to come together to put a motion supporting farmers to it. And, you know, and Barry said it, Alex has said it, I still think you're really bruised that you lost the election. And that's what it's really about. And you're using the farmers as a way, as another means, like you did last time, the last meeting, to just attack Labour and use the same language that you always come out with. You know, and if you ask the people of Derbyshire today, Councillor Major, what's important to the people of Derbyshire? Yes, farming is important, but you lower it by mentioning the brand of Wellington boot that a minister is wearing. People of Derbyshire that is a cheap jibe, and you're using farmers as a cheap jibe. What really matters to the people of Derbyshire is that you have broken this council. You have brought it to its knees. You know, I was at an event 10 days ago, presentation of the LGA on finances. The presenter walked into the room and said, we're going to talk about local government finances. And this presentation covers all the councils in this room, except Derbyshire, because you are really in a mess. And then what's the word? Was it basket case was used about this authority? We've heard today that you don't know how to manage a budget, so you're having to pay 200,000 to bring people in. And Councillor Major, I could go through your record of how you have let down the people of Derbyshire. Last year, your financial management was so good, you didn't spot a £46 million black hole coming over the horizon. You failed the children of Derbyshire. We've had a recent damning Sen report. You've had 32 pages of an ombudsman report on Sen complaints that upheld against the county. You failed to get kids to school in September because the drivers didn't have DBSs. You only spent 1.5 million out of 75 million received for school places for kids with SEND. You've slashed 121 jobs and closed children's centres. You've nearly doubled the cost of school meals, and schools like Unston and Bolsover, they haven't got boilers working. Yeah, but you've known about that and you omitted it on a poll since the summer. No, with it.
I did not say that. I said that I found out about it the day before, but it had happened back in July. That is just not true. You are lying.
I'll take it back then. Just that bit. And we've had today, from Mr. Billings, that cabinet members have failed to respond to numerous emails. We're selling off the care homes. We're now selling off Ada Belfield most likely after the consultation. Closing daycare centres. I could just go on. In fact, I've got too many pages. But, Derbyshire is failing, and you are just using this as a distractionary tactic for it. And as I said, I've got pages on pages of your failure. But I will be honest, let's be fair, Derbyshire is good at one thing. We are the pothole capital of the country. So, let's give credit where credit due. But let's look at the Tory record on farming. Well, they were in government. After Brexit delays to the post-Brexit payment schemes for farmers, many were left struggling to pay their bills. And when finally that payment system was put in place, some farmers saw their subsidies cut in as much by half. The Conservatives brokered trade deals with Australia and New Zealand that allowed cheap imports of meat to flood into the UK and put at risk our livestock trade. And have you already forgotten the tractor protests that were taking place? The Conservatives failed to take sufficient action on flooding, leaving farmland devastated. I know that a farmer from Hull had to move his sheep to the field next to my house because his land was underwater. And Boris Johnson, remember him, famously laughed when 40,000 pigs had to be culled due to the lack of an abattoir workers. And I think you've forgotten, because you've got short memories, haven't you? In 2023, Therese Coffey, the Environmental Secretary, was booed at the NFU conference. And as recent as September this year, the NFU slammed the former Conservative government's handling of finances after DEFRA confirmed they failed to pass on £358 million of funding to farmers. So it was lovely, Barry, to see you gallivanting in London with your new friends, Jeremy Clarkson, Katie Hopkins, and Andrew Lloyd Webber. But I didn't see you on the terrace protesting when the vulnerable pensioners in Derbyshire, with modest savings of £23,500, could be potentially now paying over £1,000 per month for a care package that they couldn't live without, that they need to just survive. I think it's clear, you made it clear what your priorities are, and it says it all. So please stop trying to score cheap political points, Councillor Major. It's not big, it's not clever, and it's most likely unsurprising that we won't be supporting your motion.
Councillor Rose, please.
Move the vote, Chair.
Oh, have you? Oh, I'm sorry, I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you to call me. I'm obviously going deaf. I was at the Farmers Do as well. The only mildly famous person I saw was Councillor Lewis. It was very nice. But I got very bored when the politicians started talking. Baroness, the Labour Baroness, and then Victoria Aitken, Ed Davey, and Kemi Badenoch. And it was like patting the farmers on the head, yeah, we're behind you, we're behind you. Well, farming's been squeezed for years by corporations, of course. So this is just an extra thing brought on by government. We've been fighting a campaign called No Farmers, No Food since the beginning of the year. Yellow background, black writing. The thing that no one's mentioned really, I think, is who's going to buy this land as it becomes available. The big problem is it's going to be not small or individuals wanting to do small farms. It's going to be big corporations. So this is really a land grab, and I can see this is similar to what's going on in America, where farming's been decimated. Local family farms have been decimated. And Mr. Gates has been buying up all the land. Now, when the large corporations, whether it's Mr. Gates or somebody else, some other organisations own the land, we're going to end up with more pressure to end the right to roam. We're going to have footpaths. Why have we got a footpath that this is our land? So then you're going to get issues with footpaths. So this is part of the change of Britain, the move away from manufacturing, because you could call farming actually manufacturing industry. So we've lost the steel, we've lost coal mining, we've lost all our manufacturing, and now we're going for the food. So once we've got no food, which is we're going to be reliant on overseas markets, so we're going to be stuffed as a nation. I know it's not very clever language, but that's what I feel. So yeah, that's a key to it, the fact that corporations will take over the land, they'll buy the land, and then we'll see 15-minute cities, 20-minute cities, all that business. Anyway, thank you.
Councillor Ford, please.
Mr. Chair. I mean, pre-election we saw Labour candidates up and down the county, certainly the one in South Derbyshire, praising farmers, praising pensioners, and the first thing they do when they get into power is betray them both. We've since seen them betray the students. There's just no end to it. But I think the biggest betrayal of them all is one we're about to see in the next few weeks, when we saw, not long after the budget in October, who was wheeled out of Downing Street, but Bill Gates. I think Councillor Rose has mentioned he's the biggest owner of solar panel farms in the US, and a hedge corporation called BlackRock, who have already put 100 million aside to buy up farmland, which does seem ironic for the hedge fund to want to buy farmland, but that's exactly what it's going to do. And it's going to be a gradual, step-by-step process to nationalise our farmland. And once that's happened, the writing is on the wall. The food production and the food standards we have, the food animal welfare standards we have, will all fall away. We've worked incredibly hard in this country. The farmers have, the DEF and other organisations have worked incredibly hard to make sure that we've got the very best food standards in the world, the very best animal welfare standards in the world. And apparently to our friends over on the far side, that stands for nothing. They'll be far happier to bring in food as they will be to bring in minerals from Brazil. They'll be bringing in food from Vietnam, from China, from anywhere where they can buy it cheaply to try and offset the enormous cost of home-produced food. It's not going to end well, Chair. You know, there's many communities now, both rural and urban, who thought, yes, let's have some change, but this change is something far worse than we all feared when we put that. Well, I certainly didn't vote for Labour, as you can appreciate. But many people did, thinking there would be a change. We saw they didn't get a very big vote, but they got a large majority, which is something else that maybe needs to be sorted in the years to come. But I think the motion that Wayne put forward is a fair motion. It's a motion for our time. It's not a distracting motion. We know where we are with the council funds. We know where we are with the finances. And thanks to the diligence of the Cabinet and for our finance people, that's been addressed. They may not like the fact it's been addressed, but it's been addressed. And let's hope in the next coming weeks and months, we can then look at our friends over on the other side and say, we told you so. Because what we've done is working, and it needs to work not just this month, this week, it needs to be next year and for many years after, because we're the only group that seems to have the nouns to get these things moving forward. And the fact that you're not going to support the motion just tells me everything I need to know about you all, sadly. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Innes, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I do repeat anything Councillor Dixon said, I apologise, but I couldn't hear everything for the cheap squad, cheap seats. This council, excuse me, yes, this council opposite amazed me. You never, ever cease to amaze me what double standards you've got. You've got so many double standards, it's a wonder you don't feel yourself coming back. I mean, one of the lines in this is, the last line is, to do more with less. It's both uninformed and deeply concerning. I thought that was your policy. I thought that was the Tory manifesto. This is what they expected the NHS to do. They expected the police to do. They expected people on universal credit to do. And that was fine. But suddenly it's abhorrent because it's a Labour council, a Labour government that's doing it. Very, very hypocritical. Avaricious tax and spend budget caused by your government, believe it or not. That's what we're trying to do, put back what harm you did to this country. You're worrying about charities, really? I think you just stopped all money to voluntary sector, haven't you? I'm sure you have, anyway. The energy prices. This is why everybody in the country is suffering. Who got the energy prices up? Wasn't me. I didn't vote for the stupid leader you put in. But I just don't want to go on and on, because I know we all know that. You all know that you're hypocrites, and we all know that you're hypocrites. When you've been elected to represent people in Derbyshire, no matter what party we are elected people in Derbyshire, and most people in Derbyshire will not be affected by this. All it will be is the millionaire farmers. The poor farmers who you portrayed won't pay this. If you have a look at what the rules are, you've got to be at least over $1 million. I can't get away from paying tax if I leave my home to my son or my daughter. We're there to pay tax. Why shouldn't the farmers contribute? I'm losing my place because I'm getting so worked up and I don't want to. Most people now, funny way, at least we could go and look. If all you've done is look what your Tory government's done and then put Labour in front. So don't laugh at me. Most people in this country now, if they want care or go in a care home, are able to contribute unless they've got less than £23,000 in the bank, which is not that much money. It's probably more than they ever thought they'd have. But they've probably got money in the bank, so they feel comfortable while they're old and they know they can pay for help. But they shouldn't have to pay for help. And then millionaire farmers shouldn't be paying inheritance tax. It can't be fair. It cannot be fair. If we lived in an affluent country, which we may have, if we'd have carried on, instead of having you lot in 2010, we may be able to do it. But you've brought the country to its knees, and we have now got to put it back. And if I got a farm worth £1 million, I'd be quite happy to pay my share. Quite happy. And I'm sure most of them will be. That's it. Thank you. We obviously really voted against this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Smith, please, and then I'm going to close the debate.
They always do it. They laugh.
Thank you, Chair.
You told me.
Just a few. Absolutely, I'm going to support this motion. I come from a background of farming. I went to Agricultural College and University, and I'm proud of that upbringing and my involvement in the farming community. Interesting that we've had a lecture from the opposition. I wonder how many people from their wards. I represent what is quite an urban ward, but people in my ward are also concerned about this. In the past, we were always encouraged to buy British. In my ward, I have butchers, bakers, the grocer that all do their very best to buy local produce for local people. What's going to happen when all the farmland's gone? Councillor Innes, just to confirm your information you've been given is incorrect. 98% of farms will be impacted on by this tax. 98%. The majority, as you've heard earlier, the majority of farms in Derbyshire are small family farms. The impact on this will be for generations. When this government finally wakes up and thinks we got this wrong, because it's costing us a fortune to import food which is not produced to the standard that our farmers in this country to produce, there's going to be nobody there to actually farm the land. The number of people going through Agricultural College at this moment in time is down because there's little chance of making a decent living in agriculture. It's mainly farmers' sons, daughters and relatives going through Agricultural College. What's the incentive to do that when this government, who has no grasp on reality, certainly to the rural economics and rural communities, when that's all gone, what are we then going to do? Because it will be too late. Or we will end up with our green and pleasant land of Derbyshire will be concreted over. We won't be able to produce food to the standard that we've been used to. Our businesses, our bakers, our butchers, our greengrocers will all be gone. You'll rely on the big supermarkets who can import it from the other side of the world. And what's the impact on the green agenda there? You don't think about that. It's just an opportunity to kick rural communities and those that support it, and that's many of the urban communities such as my division. If you're not going to support this, and I really hope you do, you need to lobby your MPs, because this is tragic for Derbyshire and tragic for England, actually for Great Britain as a nation. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mater, please, to close.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Dixon, you was doing so well, wasn't you? You was doing so well, and until one point where you started listing all the problems farmers were facing, but then you did it to them anyway. And then you was also doing well. You was also doing well until your colleague spoke. And the mask slipped. And this is politics of envy, isn't it? This is, your view is that these are rich landowners and you need to take things away from them. That's what Councillor Innes said.
Yeah.
You may hide that mask. And I know you was embarrassed because you could barely remove your hand from your face when she was speaking. You knew that she'd messed up and let the mask slip, and it did. And I've been here long enough, Chairman, not quite as long as Councillor Allen or Councillor Parkinson, to have seen things take place. And to say hypocrisy on this, I remember them in control and the 157 million. I remember them closing care homes and saying because it's financially necessary, making changes to housing-related support payment that would have kept people in the home zones longer because it's absolutely necessary, and laying every little centimetre of blame squarely on Westminster and central government. That's what they did. They even put out campaigns, employed communication experts to push that narrative. But now, all of a sudden, there's a Labour government. Westminster seem to have no influence at all on these things. They can't do anything. At least when we was in control and there was key issues like potholes, which Councillor Dixon mentioned, we at least challenged our own government, called for more money. We called for more money on adult social care. We called for more money on children's services. But will you even call for it? No? Absolute silence. We even have this situation where I remember all the fuss they made on building schools for the future programme. Yet today I heard the astonishing thing of a Labour shadow cabinet member and former cabinet member who made those very arguments at one stage, actually standing here saying, oh, we don't need more investment we don't need more school buildings in Derbyshire. It's absolutely astonishing. So to say we're hypocritical, the reality is that Labour misled so many sections of the communities, farmers, elder people, students, pre-election, and it's coming home to roost. We already see millions of people sign a petition calling for a general election because they know they was misled to and lied to by this Labour government.
Yes. So we will now move to the vote. Thank you.
Okay, so you'll have to bear with us because quite a few people have left. So if I call a name of somebody that's left, can you just shout quickly to save time? So for this vote, when I call your name, please state for, against or abstain. Mr. Chairman.
For.
Councillor Allen.
For.
Oh, Councillor Ashton.
For.
Councillor Atwell.
For.
Councillor Atkin. Councillor Barron's not here. Councillor Bingham. Councillor Bryan's not here. Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Burfoot. Councillor Clark. No. Councillor Collins. Councillor Cupid. Councillor Dale, Alex Dale, sorry. Councillor Christine Dale. Councillor Dixon. Councillor Muller. Councillor Flatley. Councillor Ford. Councillor Fordham. Councillor Foster's aren't here. Councillor George.
Against.
Councillor Gibson's gone. Councillor Gillett. Councillor Greenhouse. Councillor Gruby. Councillor Gourlay. Councillor Hart. Councillor Hayes. Sorry, Councillor Hayes, sorry. Not here. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Hickton. Councillor Hobson. Councillor Hoy's not here. Councillor Eilif. Councillor Innes. Councillor Kinsella. Councillor Kemp. Councillor King. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Major. Councillor Mihaly. Councillor Moss. Councillor Musson. Councillor Murphy. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Niblock's not here. Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Patton. Councillor Ramsey. Yes. Councillor Rennick. She's left. Councillor Rose. Councillor Siddle. Not here. Councillor Smith. Councillor Spencer. Councillor Stevenson's not here. Councillor Swan. Councillor Sutton. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Warmby. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Woods isn't here. Councillor Woolley, not here. Councillor Yates. That's it. A motion is one.
So the motion is carried. All that now remains is to thank you for your attendance today and wish you all a Merry Christmas and a healthy and prosperous New Year. Don't forget there's some snap across the wall.